Okay, it's we're here. We're live. Looks like everything is okie dokie. We got yeah, we got stuff going on. We got some people watching and listening. This is great. Um, how's it going, my fellow disembodied voice?
Yeah, that's the only way to fly. Got to try and keep some privacy in this crazy non-privacy world.
Right.
It's going good, Script. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing pretty good. The only hiccup that I've had for the last like 2 weeks or so is my sleep schedule is completely off. Like I still get my 8 hours, but they're coming in. I'm waking up 5, 6 hours later in the day than I'd like to. I'm pretty much on like LA time, and I hate
Ooh,
it when you're on the East Coast.
because
Um,
you were going to travel out there, weren't you? I thought you had some stuff lined up, some appointments. Did that happen, or has it not happened yet?
it's supposed to be the end of this month. I'm trying to get the. I mean, I've got all the scheduling dates kind of down. I'm just waiting to hear back on some completed gigs to get some just fun money so that I can go out there and actually like live it up a little bit. Otherwise, it'll be a very frugal and trip and it won't be as fun. So I don't want to do
Oh
that
yeah,
because you got to
yeah.
do budget conscious stuff like this. I mean, I among many screenwriters, we are not millionaires. We're like at best thousandaires or tens of thousandaires, if you want to use any type of word of that nature. So yeah, I'm just getting all those down. Like I've got things booked, but what's interesting too is like even some of the people I plan to go meet and reconnect with in LA, they're like, "Eh, you can come down, or we could just Zoom." you know, it's almost like they're just very conditioned to the
COVID changed it
pandemic
all,
stuff.
my friend.
Yeah, it really did. But I want to go down there. We finally got some great weather up here where I am, but I also want to just see what's going on the West Coast, see how much LA has changed, all that type of stuff. And then kind of get back into some heavier stuff because I've got a bunch of scripts that are going out, getting some good traction. I'm on the wait list for a development deal that I did at the beginning of the year, so we're waiting to see where we get a pilot out of that. Crossing my fingers, of course, but not going to hold my breath.
Sounds like a lot of movement. I bet you that feels good after what, 2 years delay after the coup.
Uh, well, it wasn't even just that. It was like 2 year delay, and then unfortunately, the current U.S.
Dry.
administration prohibited anyone from other countries that wouldn't show medical information from entering in. And it's like,
Oh,
geez, you really want to do that to a Jewish Canadian guy who's like, literally, I'd go to the border and it's like papers, and then you hand him the passport, and it's like, no, not these. It's like, oh, you no. But when that
ugh.
lifted, just that lifted right before the strike last year and I was all set to go. But then the strike happened. It's like, well, now I can't do anything because
Now all you could do is play what Age of Conan on online. I remember when you
pretty
were
much
doing that
that's
just
what
to
I had to
kill some
do. I had to
time.
play Age of Conan. I also did a lot of writing with my colleagues, some writing partners I know in LA, which now those scripts are out. We're looking for funding. We're looking for production and all that stuff. We got some good talent attached to it, which is exciting. So we're just waiting to see what happens there. That's the worst part about this industry that they
Wait,
don't
wait.
tell you.
I want clarity on this. I hope the listeners do too. So you've already got some talent attached. How does that process work? Like, do you show them the script, or do you show their agent the script, or their agent see the script, and then you hear back? Like, what? How does that come together?
In various ways. So in some cases, it's just you bump into them and you shoot the breeze, and then you say, "Yeah, I'm working on this." Give them the log line pitch, and usually, I mean, if they're a talent that it excites them, they're like, "Oh, can you send me it?" And then you go, "Yeah, I'll send you the script." And then from there, that's where the negotiation kind of starts, especially in some of these situations. Other situations are, I've worked with people, and I myself, we are friends with some other actors, and so we have their contact information, and we just kind of reach out and we say, "Hey, I wrote this. When I finished the rewrite and polished it up, I thought of you as this character. Would you be interested?" And then when they say yes, okay, send me the script, you go and send the script. You never just blindly send them the script and say, "Hey, we would love this." You always got
Yeah,
to
I was
just
gonna say
test the
because that
waters.
would probably it would go straight to the probably to the spam filter or whatever.
Pretty
But
much.
how do you protect yourself when you even when you do it in that in those ways that you just described? How do you protect your material from getting hijacked, borrowed, stolen, whatever?
Oh, just don't send it to anyone you don't know. I mean, that's just the simple thing.
So you
Like
trust this talent. These are people you've worked with in the past, or
these are named actors that don't care about that type of stuff. Like
Mhm.
the only people that will steal in Hollywood aren't actually in Hollywood. They're in the, what would be, we would call 20 years ago, the straight to DVD market. A lot of people on the independent sphere, so we're talking like micro budget productions under $1 million, they'll steal because they're so desperate to get in. So you
Oh,
don't have to worry
gotcha.
about that. If you're talking to actors, actors don't care about who writes the script. They just think if you wrote something great and they want to be a part of it, they'll work with you. Why would they work with someone else? Then there's
So
some
just
other people who like producers who are like, we've got connections to these celebrities, but we want to work with you, but they have their own writers to want to work on this. Like, yeah, no, you're just gonna steal. That's actually kind of basically signing the rights over to the script, so it's basically a transitive property. And I always turn those deals down. I've already told my writing partners, if you ever get a deal like that, turn it down, because it's really just about them taking your work and then someone kind of just giving it a polish or a rewrite within their crew to take it and help themselves out. Then you guys, me and my writing partner and myself, or them, would be out in the dust because nobody knows that you actually were the ones that wrote the story. And
so you get no credit and no money, or do you get some
oh, you
money
get a
in
ton of money,
situation?
but you get no credit, right? That's the thing.
Gotcha.
And it's like, no, because that's not how Hollywood works. Hollywood, the money is fun, but the credit is what gets you more money.
Yeah, I was going to say knowing your name is what gets you. That's your pipeline, right?
Yeah.
Gets things coming to you.
Oh yeah, it's
So
reputation based economy.
would you what's more common then? Is it more common, or I actually have two questions in one. Is
Go
it
for
more
it.
common slash easier to go to the talent, to go to the actors and get them on board and get them excited
Hmm.
and work the film that way, or is it easier to go through like a studio and then they pick the actors?
Um, on the if you're doing something that's your stuff, it's not an open writing assignment or something with a studio deal in place. If it's your own thing, always go to the actor. Um, know who, establish a relationship with the actor first. Don't just go to them cold, because that's never going to work. Go to the actor, pitch them the idea, whatnot. If they really like it, they will put you in touch with their agent to negotiate a deal. You can go to the agent all you want, but the agent's most likely 99% out of 100 is not going to move that script towards the talent. They, especially if you're like an unknown, or at least you're just starting out or what have you, they don't care. They
Right.
pawn it off to a reader. The reader gives their notes. They look over it. They toss it, and then they move on. They're looking for bigger. They're looking for bigger paydays. But the irony is that actors aren't really looking. They're looking for paid work, but they're also looking for something that builds their career. And you don't get
Yeah.
that from open writing assignments, sadly, unless it's like of a huge IP that's got a lot behind it. You're kind of looking for your mid-budget movies, which are slowly making a comeback. But the thing is, we don't know where the distribution model is going to be. Is it going to be a theatrical run, or is it going to be streaming? And if so, what type of streaming run is it going to be? Is it going to be dispersed among a bunch of streaming services? Is it going to be localized to one? Like, nobody knows right now. We're in the Cold War of the streaming wars. Like, the hot war is done. The streamers that we have out there right now, those are probably not going to change very much or significantly for the duration of Hollywood's existence. And
So it's pretty settled at this point, is what
oh
you're
yeah,
thinking.
pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
I think Tubi's probably going to be the winner by the end of everything, because it's the better model, and Hulu's kind of breaking apart, unfortunately, with its Disney recently acquiring it. So
Well, what do you mean? Everything Disney touches is successful.
yeah.
Oh man, I need to go take a shower that after just saying those words. So okay, that's all great, but I feel like you kind of glossed over a major step there, which is get to know the talent first.
So well, that's the
So
hard part,
that
right?
just
You got to
meet,
be where
meet them
they
at
are.
exactly. So you're meeting them at parties or at debuts or like whatever, and you have
Hmm.
to go break the ice and not be a fanboy, right? Because then you're
Right.
just another fanboy. You have to stand out a little bit when you meet the talent. So, okay, one more question, and I know you want to get into the script tonight. So, what do you do to not come off as a fanboy and to stand out from all the other people that are trying to get this actor's attention? What do you do? Do you
Uh,
have a plan that works pretty well, or you just kind of wing it?
always treat them like they're human beings. Forget that they're celebrities. That's their best advice. Um, be very casual and do a lot more listening than talking. Those are the ways. Because you're playing into an actor. Actors have a big set of egos that are fighting with each other all the time. internally. Um, they, with very few exceptions, most of them are idiots, so they're easy to manipulate.
I've heard you say that so many times.
I mean, Liz, when you meet a smart actor, you know you've met a smart actor.
It just sounds so accurate, but yet so not insincere, so insulting. I think at the same time.
It really is. But ideally, when you're dealing with actors, especially at that a certain tier of celebrity, the last thing they want to be treated like is a celeb, because it goes. They're very much aware that goes to your head and you become crazy.
So plus that's probably normal for them, right?
Yeah.
To stand out is you don't treat them like everyone else does. So what do? You walk up to an actor that you would like to work with and you say, "Hey, dickhead, how you doing?" And then just go from there. Like, do you neg them a little bit? What do you do?
Usually, just you'll introduce yourself and then say their name formally. So instead of their first name, you do their Mr., Miss, whatever, and then their surname, and then introduce yourself, say how much you've enjoyed their work, and then ask them what got you to want to pursue this line of career. Is usually a good question. It's an easy one for them to answer. Or if you're at a party or event, you can comment like, what are your thoughts? Like, just get into their head and get into their opinions on something that orbits the business, but is not something that you would otherwise think that they've answered a billion times before. So one of the things that I like to do is I love watching actor interviews, and then I just pay attention to the questions that are being asked. And if it's a question that's been asked, I would just say, okay, I'm never going to ask that person that question because I know they've answered it. And then you just kind of have to fish around and ask them a question that they've never answered before. Like, for instance, when you're shopping for shoes, do you go by like width or length first before you actually start trying them on, or something like just something personal and interesting that's unrelated that actually tells you you're more interested in who they are as opposed to what they have presented on into the public sphere. That's something that I learned that kind of oddly early on because I was brought into a meeting with some pretty prominent managers and agents and I was working as an assistant for somebody, and everybody in that room was wearing beat up t-shirts and sweatpants and sneakers, and these were people that make more money in an hour than most people in the United States make in their life. And it's like they're dressed like slobs because they only really wear suits and stuff to public events that they have to when they're around the office and stuff, even though there's some type of casual or formal casual attire. If they can get away with it, they will come in like they just got out of the gym and smell and don't care because it's all business and time, time is money type of stuff.
I believe that.
I saw some person he used to be the manager to Michael Douglas way back when. He entered into a meeting wearing a white t-shirt with cigarette hole burns in it. And I couldn't tell you if they were fresh or from years ago. There's so many on his shirt. And he was still treated with quite a level of reverence because he represented a lot of important people. But I thought it was kind of funny that this is how he presented himself. But it came to the fact that, yeah, everybody just doesn't care, especially if it's a little too hot out or if there's been a crazy week going on in town and everybody's kind of rushing around. They just like slap on some clothes so they don't get arrested for public indecency and then just go to wherever. It's kind of hysterical. But I mean, one of the biggest illusions of Hollywood is that it's a lot of glitz and glamour all the time. It's like, no, it's not. They're just like everybody else, but they live in a bubble where there's a perception that's skewered. The light has been refracted so much they can't really see what's outside the bubble, even though some of their own habits are something that a lot of us, after we get off work, a hard day, we just want to get into like either pajama pants and a shirt and lie on the couch and drink some alcohol or grab some junk food or something. That's a lot of talent.
Script. Are you wearing pants right now?
Of course.
I'm not. But I'm wearing shorts. I'm not wearing nothing. But
it's a little colder where I am. I have to wear some pants, so I got some.
Oh, yeah. You are further north than me, though. I'm not that far south. I'm in Idaho, so we're not super south. But cool. That's awesome. See, I love stuff like this. See, getting a little peek behind the curtain, because this is all stuff that people that aren't in the industry, we don't get this. We don't understand the steps and the. I got a taste of the atmosphere. I spent a week down there with a friend I met, and he lived in Marina Del Rey and was very connected in Hollywood. I don't know if he'd want me to say his name, so I'm not going to. But he showed me around. I got to go to some green rooms, some shows, and it blew my mind. And it's easy for me to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm not impressed. They're just people. And when you actually go down there and you're walking through a studio, you know, like we did the, I believe it was the Sony lot now, and we did the tour where they showed you where they did the song for, you know, somewhere over the rainbow,
Right.
and you're looking right where Debbie Reynolds, right? Am I remembering
No, it'd
correctly?
be it says
What's her name?
Dorothy.
Hamill?
No. Well, I mean Dorothy's a character, but it's because Debbie Reynolds is Carrie Fisher's mom.
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland is
Judy
who you're
Garland.
thinking of. Yeah.
Yes.
I had to go through all the things there.
Yeah, I know, me too. But standing right where she stood when she sang that in that studio was freaking cool. Very cool moment of my life. And they still have the bicycle. The bicycle was hanging up at the top of the studio, and it's just so neat to finally see that. And so many great soundtracks were recorded, or scores were recorded in that room. And yeah, and as a movie nerd, you can't help but geek out. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing, you know. And so I get it. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. It doesn't affect me, you know, because I'm not really that impressed by all that stuff. I just don't really care. I do understand they're just people. You know, I did my stint as a local radio DJ, so I'm like, I get the small town celebrity stuff, and the big stuff was just that, but bigger, I'm sure, right? And so I'm like, no, it's all just smoke and mirrors, really, at the end of the day. So I only place so much value on it, but actually going down there and wandering around and seeing it up close it affected me more than I thought it would. I thought I played a lot cooler, you know?
Right.
And once I was down there, I'm like, no, this is really neat. And there is sort of a magic there. So I get it. I get why some people can go down there and kind of lose their brain, especially if they start getting some success and their ego takes over. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen to you.
No, I mean, I get
grounded.
starstruck usually over the technical people. Like, I got to meet V. Neal, who's a makeup artist, one of the best makeup artists in the business. She did the original Beetlejuice makeup and did a bunch of the crazy, wacky stuff for Tim Burton films. I got to meet her and hang out with her for about 15 minutes. And the only reason I got to get introduced to her is I was in the area, and she and her assistant stopped and screamed, "Oh my God, I love your hair!" And I had no idea they were talking about me, and they did. And they came over and they said, "Hi," and they just like, "Can we stroke it?" And I'm like, I didn't have long hair or anything. I just have hair, but for some reason they liked it. And then we just got to talking, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is just hair and makeup artist. And I found out this is kind of a huge thing, because when I came back to Canada, I started going to some other sets. This would be 2008, 7, 8, 9. A lot of makeup artists would always comment on how much they like my hair, even though I don't put product in it. I don't do anything with it. I just get a simple cut. But they just like it. It's so weird. My girlfriend likes my hair a lot too, and I was like, yeah, this is
Wait, what was it? What drew them over? Was it a mullet? Like what made you stand out?
No, I have a normal haircut, like a high and tight type of thing, you know, like what you see on my avatar. Like, that's it. It's just it's simple.
And that brought her over. She's like, I love your hair, because it was like, well, it's not crazy hair, it's cool hair. That's why.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Funny.
Like there was a thing years ago where I was helping out a buddy on a short film, and I grew my hair out for the short film, and I got punched in the face. My character gets punched in the face, and my hair kind of whips around. And even the hair and makeup person like, that is some good looking hair. I'm like, okay, whatever, because it hides the fist, hides the connection, all that stuff. But it's hard to maintain. Like, if I had like 70s like Dirk Benedict hair, I can't maintain that. That's too much for me. I got to get it really short, kind of like.
Okay, will you do us all a favor? Now that this sweet little detail is out, will you at some point make an avatar that you have on screen for us, and please Photoshop your real hair, okay? Cut it out of a real photograph and place it over your avatar so we can see this amazing hair, because I'm seriously curious now. I want to see how nice your hair is, dude. That's awesome.
I don't know. I mean, it's. I don't think it's nice. I think it's normal. But I literally traced it. It's on my. That's my hair. I traced it.
I know, but I want to see the real hair now. That would be, because your background's real, right? Like,
yeah.
that's real. So please Photoshop your real hair over your avatar. I want to see it now. I've got to see it.
One day maybe, if I can get good enough. Perhaps.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm seriously so curious that it was so good, but yet, you're so humble about it. Like, yeah, I don't know why she came over, and it wasn't anything fancy, but because you might be sitting on like a gold mine. I mean, you might be
it's
able to
nowhere
model
near
us,
as good as Culture's Casino's hair. That's some epic stuff there. I'll put it to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he's got the do, man, like that.
And the facial hair. So it's all balanced, It's
Yep.
like, it's kind of like Gandalf.
I can't even grow a beard that long. It just anytime I like touch it by accident, it feels like it's like pricks and needles in my face, and I'm like, nah, that's too much. I gotta trim it down. Um,
Yeah, mine. I'll let mine get about an inch at the longest, and then I gotta shave it. I hate it. It catches on everything. So,
Man,
oh,
so we've really circulated around getting onto this show
we did this
started, but
last time. I'm
that's
so
okay.
sorry.
No,
We just
no.
wander. We just wander. So we're here to talk about a script, not about just Hollywood. So yeah, sorry.
No, but I mean there's some overlap to that as well. So let's get this on the road. Thanks for everyone pouring into the chat and hanging in as we shoot the breeze with that. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts, both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is TJ Mack of Mac Media. Well, that was a heck of a preamble. We're back into the show. Up here in Canada, it's a soft Canada Day long weekend. Not really. There's no fireworks yet. I think that's coming in. We're doing that later in the week. We got 4th of July coming up next weekend. So to all my American brothers and sisters out there, happy 4th for you.
Yes, thank
when
you.
that comes, I'm on the fence if I'm going to do a live show that weekend or if I'm going to do a pre-recorded. So I'll get back to all you guys in the coming days when I figure that out. But we got one heck of an interesting script this week. It placed 13th on last year's Blacklist. That's the 2023 Blacklist. It's called Hot Mess, written by Shanrah Wakefield, who has had a number of credits in the industry. It's interesting. If you do Google her and look her up on IMDb, you'll notice a very peculiar point in time when her career started to ramp up. And so I'll just let you know what that might telegraph. And it placed number 13 with 18 votes, so low vote count, low top 20 script, which is not actually a horrible place to be for that. TJ, could you share with us the log line for Hot Mess?
Sure. Yes. A disgraced journalist relegated to covering a scandal-prone celebrity uncovers a shocking secret about her subject's true identity, leading them to join forces against a sinister corporate conspiracy at a luxury island resort.
Yes. And what's funny is that logline is not actually attached to this screenplay because the writer, and this is a common thing I find, wrote a synopsis and called it a logline. So I had to come up with that for them. And because the synopsis that Shanrah pitched as a logline with their script is as follows. Sandy was once a formidable investigative reporter until a bungled story destroyed her credibility and forced her into the soul-sucking world of tabloid gossip. Now her days are spent covering hot mess celebrity Margot Ford. When a disillusioned Sandy is called to Fiji to follow Margot's latest hijinks, she discovers a surprise about Margot's real identity, which sends her on an adventure she never imagined, as the two must team up to take down a massive, sinister corporate plot with global implications, all taking place at a luxury island resort. That is not a logline.
You could say that in one elevator ride if you were going to the top floor.
It's different because a log line is like, oh, I'm going to test the waters. Great. What's it about? Okay, that's the log line. Give me the details. What's it about? Okay, the main character is named Sandy. She's dealing with some crazy lady named Margot. Like, that's kind of what you do. A log line, I'll put this in some text. I do this on my Patreon all the time. I do this whenever I can on videos. A log line is usually supposed to be under like 50 words. You're not supposed to put any character names because they don't matter at this point. It's all about what is the character, what are they trying to do, and what's stopping them. So that's why the logline has, it's a disgraced journalist. Okay, it's a disgraced journalist. Her name is irrelevant at this point. I know way more about her as a disgraced journalist than I do with that her name is Sandy. That's why the logline is supposed to do.
Okay.
And then a synopsis or a summary is what, the writer put the original logline through. And whenever I see writers do this, especially ones with somewhat lengthy careers, it feels to me like they've actually not grown as a writer because a log line is supposed to be short. It's supposed to be like a line of dialogue, a line of text, something you'd find in a TV guide, but not like on like their previews of like this show is coming out and we're going to give you all the details. It's more like, oh, you're looking at the little tiny box on the page that only has
Yeah.
enough room for like 2 lines, 2 sentences, and it's going to tell you what the episode is about. Like Quincy has to discover why these people taking this normal aspirin are overdosing on heroin. Like, you know, like that's kind of how you should be phrasing a logline. Very simple, very direct, to the point. And when I see a script that's pitched with that as a logline, with that synopsis essentially as a logline, it tells me 2 things. Number one, the writer has no discipline in their language and their use of page real estate. And number 2, they are extremely excited about the story, so much so that they are ruining the fun of what the story they're trying to tell, because they gave away a lot in that synopsis.
Oh, because they're like gushing right from the get-go. They're
exactly.
gushing all this stuff. Okay, gotcha.
You got to have a little bit of discipline. It's one of the things that I give advice to for my colleagues and friends and whatnot, is that when you're going into a room to pitch, it's okay to have some excitement, but the context is that you, as the writer who are pitching to this studio or to this producer or actor, you're there to solve a problem. And that problem is that they are looking for something to do next. They're looking for their next project to either invest in, get attached to, or fund. They are actually looking for you. So come in there and be like, I'm here to solve your problem. This is this awesome script I've got, and then pitch it. Don't come in there like, I love your work, you're the great, you're the best, whatever, blah, 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 and then talk so much about them that you're not helping them identify the fact that you are here to help them, as opposed to they're being there to help you. Because you're not there to be helped by them. You're there to help them, and and what you negotiate is how you are how they help you. And so that's kind of the relationships you kind of have to get used to on the pitching side of things. And I know people that have been in this industry decades longer than I have, who still go into that exciting stuff like, oh, you're great, high energy. It never works for them on the pitches, but if they do get lucky enough to get the job, the high energy that they have towards either writing, directing, acting, or what have you, that's where it highlights on the for the film itself. So it's high energy is good for the production. Confident energy, without being too arrogant, is really good on selling that production.
Yeah. And that's a rule of thumb for anything in life. Confidence is good. Arrogance is bad. That's the difference between I'm good at this versus I'm better than you at this. And that's a very key thing to keep in mind. I've seen so many people that are overly humble because they think that being too confident is bad. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no. You have to understand is once you start to merge into that lane of arrogance, that's when you're going to start to put people off, right? They're going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
And so the easiest way to tell is that attitude of I'm good at this versus I'm better than you at this, right?
Right.
And I know in that exact situation, of course, you're not there to be better than the people in the room you're trying to sell the script to. But the main general consensus would be the same, right? Like you're there to have this confident solution to their problem of, do you have something that we want to that we could make money off of, right? You're basically a salesman.
It's more like coming in there saying, I'm the best at what I do, and if we work together, we'll be the best together. Because you're the best at what you do, I'm the best at what I do. When we work together, we become the best together. That's kind of like the goal that you're trying to convey in your pitch. And I have no problem with, if you're pitching and you're a writer and you've got a script that you love, lie your socks off to try and get them to buy it if you can. Like anything you can say that you don't have to deliver on, like just of the abstract type of things, because mostly they'll never read your script, but they'll just sell them on the idea of the stuff you want to do. And if you get that go ahead, it's like, okay, now you go to the next point, which is, okay, how do I reconcile the fibs I've said so that I can get this project moving to the next step and the next step and the next step. Just don't ever lie, say I've got a director attached, I've got an actor attached, or all that type of stuff. It never works, because the moment you walk out of the office, they call those people and they'll reach them faster than you ever will, and they'll find out and verify, and then you're done.
Makes sense, but it also sounds very similar to when actors lie about on their, what do they call it, a one sheet or whatever, all the stuff that they can do, and they're like, oh, I can ride horses, I know karate
on their CV,
I can do all, yeah, on their CV, and it's like, no, that's, but if they get the job, then they learn very quickly, right? And they kind of know that, so it seems like that's kind of status quo or par, I should say, for that situation. Yeah. Before I forget, one last question. So when you're talking about the log line, I had this question come to mind. So if there's a really long log line, like in this situation, exactly, the synopsis was really the log line. Does it also show another angle of that is the people that might be purchasing the script? Is there, in that same situation, could it be possible that they feel kind of insulted that you don't respect their time enough to even put together a nice, short, tight log line?
Well, so you're going through a number of different tiers. So you're never really getting to the top of the of the person that's going to greenlight this with your log line right away. You're getting to their low-level assistants that will determine whether or not this goes to the next tier up. So yes, if you want to be brief, because they have hundreds of scripts a week to read, and they get the log lines as their preface to like prep them. Okay, this is the mindset I got to go into the script for because this is what they're trying to convey. The shorter, the better.
So they might kick your script out instantly just because they look at that really long log line and go, "This is a red flag right here. Boom! I'm not going to waste my time," because they've got 100 more.
It's not that they'll kick it out. They'll be like, "There's a chance this is going to be like." The last thing you want to do is incept into them, implant the idea that this is going to be a not enjoyable script read.
Gotcha. So you're starting off on a bad foot right there.
Yeah, it doesn't just apply to movies; it applies to everything. Like I've read novels when I was a copywriter in publishing, where the author would pitch a log line that was like 2 pages, and the novel was always terrible, and you're like, ugh. So anytime you see anyone like not being able to succinctly pitch their story in like a single sentence or 50 words or less, that's a red flag. And even for myself, whenever I write something new, I spend a lot of time refining my pitch to make sure that I'm getting to the bare essentials of what the story is, and while still keeping it exciting under that 50-word limit. And if I can do that, I'm good. And if I can never do that, then I know there's something wrong with the story because it's too complex in certain areas that are causing the log line to be too long. So you got to have to refine it over and over again. And it's this kind of weird Libra scale balancing act where from how you pitch the story to how it's written, you got to reconcile those so that they're in sync with each other. So ideally, the style that you write your log line in, that style is going to be reflective in everything that you wrote on your screenplay, and it's going to show a lot of confidence. It's also going to convey the level of craft you have to anyone reading the script, whether they're first-run readers straight out of university, an assistant job, whether it goes up to your lower executive, your senior executive, then your top-tier guy. All of those people are going to make that connection, be like, okay, I see why this script made it to me. The log line is perfect, and the first 10 pages are right in sync with the voice, characterization, efficiency, and how they're telling the story. That all great. This guy knows what they're doing, or this girl knows what they're doing. Going to keep reading until you stop reading, and then from there, go in their notes, make their decision. That's just kind of how it works out. Same thing when it applies to managers and agents, especially if you're doing it cold, which means that you're meeting a manager or agent that you don't have a shared mutual friend or business relationship with. So they're looking at you as like, are you really worth my time? And if you send them, I would say, a log line like this paragraph, they're not going to be very, very pleased with you. And in this case here, I highly suspect that Shanrah Wakefield, and I don't mean this as an insult or anything, I suspect that some of her connections were made through friends and mutuals, because she is apparently represented at CAA, one of the higher agencies in town, and as well as Grandview, as I think as well. She mentioned that on the screenplay. Bryant Barley, she says on her screenplays who her representative is at CAA. I think they have a mutual friend. Because
what's Grandview? I noticed that too. What's Grandview refer to?
Grandview is another. It's like a management agency.
Oh, okay.
So like gotcha. Writers and actors and stuff, they should have an agent and a manager. A manager manages them to make sure their brand is good and strong, and an agent negotiates the deals. Manager can technically do both, but they have a smaller clientele list. Agents have a much larger client roster. So you gotta have to kind of have to figure that stuff out on your own. I wish there was a way I could convey like how easy it is or how difficult it is to get an agent, but it's a different story every time. There's no consistency to it.
Okay, cool.
But
awesome.
Yeah, so she wrote this script, which it's a lengthy one. It's 113 pages.
Yes.
It's framed as a comedy to a degree.
No.
But was it funny, TJ?
Oh, how do I count
funny?
the ways? It was funny in parts. It was.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. The thing about doing this show is sometimes I'm torn between, I don't want to be overly honest and be brutal. I mean, honestly, these writers probably don't care. They'll probably never hear it. But if they do, I don't want to be offensive, but I also don't want to lie, right? I don't want to sugarcoat it. If it was my work, I'd like to get as much honest feedback from people as possible, right? That's accurate to the work. And I feel like it's kind of what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
So I would have to say that if I had to boil this all down to one sentence, I would say, I hate you for making me read this script. That's what I would say. It's not the worst thing I've read. It's not the best. It's in the lore. I'd say it's about a 3 out of 10 for me. There are parts of this I really like. I do like her style of writing overall. I really do. There's a lot of there's a lot of caps lock, which I'm not used to, but it's okay. I'm used to seeing that and hearing screaming in my head, but for here I think it worked fine in dialogue. The cast or the cast of characters I could keep straight, so I didn't have a problem with that. But there are just so many parts that I'm sure we'll get to. I've got highlighted here when we get to them that I either scratched my head like what, or felt very shoehorned in, like we're doing check boxes for DEI type stuff that was so obvious. It really it hit the brakes on whatever's happening. And then some of it, I'm not gonna lie, there were parts of this where she was writing men. And I'm like, you're not even close. A man would never even say this sentence. Like it just blew my mind. It felt so awkward that I'm like, this needs a rewrite. I would have handed this back. So there's some of the highlights on why I didn't like it, and why I did like it.
Yeah, I will say this. She introduces a lot of characters and then discards many of them for like the handful of who we have. So we have Margot, we have Sandy, we have her intern Jordy, and then there's a character named TJ here.
Yep, the ex-boyfriend.
The ex-boyfriend.
We had Alex.
Then you have Alex, Joe, antagonist. Dan.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos is in it.
I think Elon is referred to, but not in it. There's Michelle Obama here in the opening scene.
Yep. So yeah, the opening scene is focused on Margot Ford, who is essentially like Paris Hilton meets Kylie Jenner and Taylor Swift all into one.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan at her worst is kind of what I thought of too.
Yeah, and basically how it works is like Margot's the biggest fan of Michelle. They're together, they shake hands, and then she ends up tossing her and Michelle Obama into a dessert table with tons of pastries and ice cream and stuff, and their clothes are ripped off, and Michelle's wearing obviously a bodysuit of Spanx and whatnot, and Margot's so embarrassed she's trying to cover her up and everything. It's this whole hot mess, hence the title.
Yeah, Margot's not covered up, by the way, in that scene when you're
does not care. That. She does not care about her
zero F's given. Uses and then proceeds to use whipped cream to cover up things and
everything that she could of Michelle to keep her, still not less embarrassed, I guess.
So I look at this like you need a hook, right? You need a good hook, in my opinion, for any story or movie. Like, get me in there, right? Pull me in. And this definitely on paper looks like, we got a hook where she's walking the red carpet. She yanks Michelle Obama. Clothing gets ripped off. And then she's just like a drunk hot mess in front of, hundreds of cameras, right? On the red carpet.
Yep.
So I love this. But it kind of left me going like, okay, yeah, I'm okay. Let's see where this goes. But it felt a little weird. I think it was the dialogue. Let me pull this up. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sure. There's not a whole lot right away. So like the paparazzi video, you got Access, Hollywood Reporter, E! News. Like Margot's first line, I think, is like, Mrs. Michelle LaVaughn Robinson Obama, thank you so much for your service. And it's all kind of like, but Margot is very, very drunk in this thing, and she's also probably on some barbiturates or other narcotics. So like you can excuse her fan gloating and all that type of stuff, because that's what her character is supposed to be. And then we have like there's nothing really Michelle Obama-y about her dialogue.
Well, and then even Margot, like it's just the dialogue doesn't feel the dialogue doesn't feel natural. So like after the tumble, right? Margot says, remember, she's drunk, she's really drunk and messed up, but yet she has the clarity of thought to be clever and witty, and she says, "Get your GD eyes off of the first ladies."
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, that line is funny, but someone who's drunk isn't gonna be clever enough to be like, "Hey, get your eyes off of the first ladies," right? And so I was like, it just felt a little off, right? I guess not quite natural to me. But again, like if you just gave me a synopsis of this scene, I'd be like, that's great. And so to me, I'm like, this just needed one or two more rewrites, I think, especially in the dialogue section to kind of polish it up. What do you think?
Yes, because only when we get the females together in a non set piece situation does the dialogue kind of ring well. But on the male side of things, and this is something that I've noticed a lot, not just with female writers, but even with some contemporary male writers, there's this whole idea of like, oh, we've got these people of very high class, and instead of them speaking in a very high class way, they speak like frat boys in college.
Oh my God, thank you. But we got to hold on to that because that comes later. Oh my God. I've got some highlights coming. Please don't go into that just yet. Please, let's get to that first. But you are so right. I'm like, who talks this way? What? Show me one percenter that's actually the 1%er, not one of their kids, right? That's a teenager that talks this way. But please put a pin in that. Let's get back to that later when it shows up because I have a spot I really want to nail hard on this, or hammer hard, I should say.
Well, I mean, it's just the fact that even when we get to like Sandy, we transition from this crazy mess between Margot and Michelle Obama to Sandy at the Daily Post, which is essentially just a tabloid. Excuse me. And she's calling it like, Red Wedding, Human Dumpster Fire, Margot Ford flashes boobs at First Lady, and all of the Grammys in a druggy haze type of thing. And then obviously puts in the alleged there to hide any liability. And we're introduced to Sandy, who is this, she's in her 40s, described as sad, joyless, celeb gossip reporter, working for this Daily Mail type rag. And
yes. For what, 7 years, right? At this point, I think.
For like 7 years or so. I'm actually always confused with some of the way the ages are because we get some flashbacks to like 2010 and 11. And it's like, well, if she's in her 40s and we're going back essentially like 15 years, at the youngest she's like 27 and at the oldest she's like 32. And yet she's talking about being teenagers. And it's like I'm very lost in this continuity here.
Oh yeah, when she talks about living on the island, right? You're right. That does throw the whole timeline into So we again rewrite, right? You could fix that. You could catch that and fix that. That's easy.
Well,
that was another oversight.
It's something I've kind of started noticing in people who were born in the 80s but identify themselves as millennials, because I don't identify as millennial. I'm a Generation Y. I'm from the generation that was called like the ones that asked annoying questions all the time, hence the Y. It wasn't just the letter, it was also the word. And then you have the kids that were born just after us in the very early 90s who never asked why. They just demanded stuff. That's what I call the millennials. And they also are the ones that have their heads shoved so far up their butt that they forget that 20 years ago was actually like, 2004, and not the 90s.
So you think there's sort of like this weird time warp in their head that they just don't. That's kind of how they see it, and then they project that into the story. Is what you're
exactly
saying.
Like they forget what the actual year is, or they don't establish that this is taking place in this period. And then when we go back 10 years and it is 2004, it is because we were taking place in 2014. We don't get that level of reconciliation with that here. In this case, it's all warbled up.
Yeah.
And
well, and the other thing, like on that note, is the way she describes some characters. Like when she started describing her coworkers, that also felt jarbled to me. I'm like, wait, what? Like I've got one highlighted here where she describes one of them as like one giving I'll edit here. I effed John Mayer vibes.
Right.
One buried in an avocado Snuggie, another slurping Dayquil. But then there's Mavis, barely alive, cobwebs on her cubicle typing. And so I'm like, wait, is she literally in her 90s? So I felt like some of this, I mean, I'm sure she knows what she's talking about, but for me, there were a lot of points in the story where I had to stop and go, wait, I get you're being clever and witty and you're turning nouns into adjectives or whatever you're doing here. But it just felt like that's more of something that you would do to go more in depth to describe this character to maybe to a director or to a casting agent. Like, this is what we're looking for, right? Give me more details on this character. It just felt weird to me. There was a lot of those throughout this script.
There was a number of just character descriptions that relied on current knowledge or certain obscure knowledge of people. Like there's the John Mayer stuff. They described the publisher of this rag that she's working at as like a Pierce Morgan looking editor. I'm like, that's not giving me
okay,
much.
But look, if you described a coworker as John Mayer, I'd understand. I know what John Mayer looks like. I picture the hat. I'd picture you know, but this is a I effed John Mayer vibes. So what does a woman look like that effed John Mayer? What kind of girl is that? I have no idea what that
I don't
even
know,
means.
dissatisfied maybe.
Is her body a wonderland? Like what is this? What am I looking at in my imagination? So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there.
You know what it kind of is? It's like early stand up. Like, have you ever seen like stand ups that are just starting out and they pluck in very strange allegories? Like, that's what kind of what we're
Oh,
getting here.
yeah, and the rhythm's bad and the delivery's bad. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. Yes, I do know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, oh, we're going to do this obscure reference to try and elicit a laugh. And people are laughing because it's awkward, not because it's funny or clever.
Or one guy in the back of the bar does. You hear this?
Yeah. Like, it's Jeff Bezos. He looks like Lex Luthor if he was impotent. You know, that type of thing. It's like, nah.
No, that was kind of funny.
Okay.
Uh,
But, like,
okay. You did too good a job there, Script. We did a worse
I'm
job.
sorry. I've kind of weeded that level of mediocrity out of me. My mediocrity is in a whole bunch of other skills. Instead of
Yes,
that.
you're too amazing. You got to tone it down, man. You need less sleep. That's your problem. You
I-
need
I
less
maybe
sleep
need
so you can
less
suck
sleep.
more.
But I mean, one of the things also here is we do have what I would assume is a self-insert because the writer's name is Shanrah, and the main character's name's Sandy, and it's like that's alphabetically that is very close to that, and you know she's described as in her 40s. This writer is clearly in her 40s, or at least looks
So
in her
but
40s.
you write what you write what you know, which I usually think as long as you do it well, I'm fine with that. That's okay. If you make it an obvious insert, like Kathleen Kennedy, every single actress in Lucasfilm is a female brunette, then I'm not okay with it. Right? It gets stupid. So yeah, and I didn't pick up on that at all. I didn't feel like that with Sandy. In fact, I think Sandy for the most part was written pretty well. And then Margot, once we have the reveal later in the story, and we're gonna get there, then Margot grew on me a bit more. Because I just have zero interest in this type of celebrity to begin with. In fact, it's a turnoff. It's quite the opposite. It repels me.
No, I mean that's kind of one of the things
So
I liked about Margot is that she was the type of celebrity that you should be repulsed by.
right.
For Sandy, the reason I think it's a bit more of a heavier fisted self-insert is that Sandy is also a writer, and the writer is a writer. So writer writing about writers. They're
Gotcha.
it's not it's not very inventive, especially so. I mean, the other part too, and this is some advice that I would say doesn't help you as a screenwriter, but I understand why some people get momentum on it, and that is, oh, read tons of newspapers and articles trying to find a story that you can adapt or inspire you to write a feature film. Well, guess what? 99% of all the writers are doing that as well. So you're going to get a lot of people coming up with the same premises and very similar executions to the point where you get into those things where it's like, oh, that person stole that idea from me. It's like, no, you're all drawing from the same water source. And because there's a virus in there, you're all infected with it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you want to stand out, you got to write something that's different. And a tabloid journalist, I think that's kind of different. But if you're a writer writing about a tabloid journalist as the main character, as opposed to maybe a secondary character or supporting character, that's when you're skewering things, and you have to be really, really, really good at writing a character that's a writer. In this one here, because for Sandy, we know that she kind of hates the fact that she is the Margot Ford go-to reporter at her paper. Like anything Margot Ford does, she has to be on it to write up the article and submit and get that done.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that's all she does. Like 100%
Yes,
dedication.
that
That's
is
all
her
of
beat. Margot is her beat.
Oh, that sounds like pure hell to me.
It
Like,
does, and the sad part is like as we're being shown who Sandy is, and the fact that she's got an intern named Jordy who is a huge fan of Margot, but also a really big fan of Sandy. And Sandy herself, she lives in a single, like she's got the default terrible life. She lives in a single one bedroom. She's so pathetic that she can't even keep a goldfish alive for more than a few days, to the point where we find out she's on number 3.
Yeah, and I felt like that was sort of a cop out. I feel like, hey, instead of making her, have a cat, we're gonna switch it to a fish that keeps dying, right? Because people don't get as, readers or viewers don't care as much about a fish dying as a cat dying, right? So it's kind of like, oh, okay, we can replace a fish. And so I'm like, okay, I guess that's different. I guess it's different, but it still felt kind of like, as Deadpool would say, minimum effort, right?
It is definitely minimum effort, because I'm of the time where it's like, if you're gonna write a character with a cat, it's funnier if the cat ran away and it just doesn't come back.
Yeah,
because
she
that
keeps.
tells you how bad their life is.
Yeah, they're like, we're gonna nope out of this apartment. It's terrible. Get me out of here. Yeah, that'd be funny. That would be funny. See, and that's a little bit more. Yeah, it's a little more. It gives it more unique, and then it attaches you to her as a character a little bit more because you're like, oh well, what's her freaking problem? She can't keep cat food in. Keep clean the litter box or whatever. So yeah, and then you're right. Jordy, her assistant, is so new that she's still starstruck. Loves Margot too. Basically, you can tell it's like, oh, this is going to be her replacement, right? Like
Hmm.
if something happens with Sandy, I felt like instantly I'm like, oh well, here's her replacement because Jordy's such a huge fan of Margot. Um, but on the whole, I was fine with Jordy. I felt like Jordy was written well.
Yeah.
She spoke the way I would expect her to. Everything felt very natural and organic with Jordy. So no problems with Jordy as a character for me in this script.
Yeah, and I didn't even have a problem with the name because, like, this is another thing. There's a lot of writers like to give masculine names to women characters. I grew up in a town where I knew 3 girls named Jordan, and so I always thought it was a girl's name first before I realized that
Oh,
men were named Jordan.
I always knew Jordan as Michael Jordan, right? It was the first time I ever heard it growing up. And then, but then I have a niece named Jordan. So yeah, same thing. Like I was good either way. So I was fine with the name. Um, but yeah, and then we get, what's next? We get into her flashback with what happened. How did she end up writing for this rag, right?
Yeah, so this thing is also what jarred me because I also warn writers about this as well. Try and avoid flashbacks if you can. Um, this one here, we have a flashback where Sandy has made an accusation about Jeff Bezos, saying that he's not physically on Earth. He's living on Mars. Like this is in the first 10
It's a
pages.
hologram.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a hologram that
He's
Jeff Bezos. This was her big breaking story that she worked hard on and had all of this evidence and all this research. And then she comes out and this is her big reveal that Jeff Bezos lives on Mars and that his hologram is running things on Earth and that he's not really even here.
He's not really even here. He's Al from Quantum Leap. He's just broadcasting a hologram Earth side to operate all the stuff with Amazon and his space program, but he's really living on Mars. And of course, it's a very absurd premise. And I'm like, okay, it's absurd for the fact that it's merely absurd. There's nothing deeper behind it. There's no real joke there. And that's I think is the problem is and this again for all you people that want to get into comedy, absurdity for the sake of absurdity is a good way to kind of get your gears flowing, but you got to give a little bit extra depth. And I would say listen to Richard Pryor, Jerry Seinfeld, George Carlin.
I just watched Superman 3 last night. Thanks for mentioning Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor saves that movie.
I love him in that. I didn't finish it. I got too tired, but oh my God. Yeah, it's just so funny. I was just watching Superman 3 last night. And,
just watch the scene where he's drunk in Smallville. And there's a scene with Richard Pryor in a mirror that's absolutely brilliant. And it's played perfectly well.
Wait, I just got to that point where he shows up drunk to get the security guard to pass out and then get into the computer system. That's pretty much where I stopped it last night. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, totally derailment there. Sorry.
I'd say even take a look at like classic Bill Cosby, despite his current reputation. Take a look at Steve Allen. Take a look at Johnny Carson. The jokes that they tell always have a bit more going on with them than what's on the surface. It's not just an obscure reference. It's not just something silly or weird. It's a proper setup, a distraction, and then a payoff. It's like a magic trick. That's what you kind of want to do with your comedies. Make it kind of magical. Don't overthink it too much, but like figure out, okay, Jeff Bezos is not here. He's a hologram. Well, okay, it's absurd, but give us a silly logic to why that is. Like, why is he a hologram on Earth? Like, why does he have to be a hologram on Earth?
Why would he? Yeah, that's my first thought. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Why would he hide that? Like, why would he?
It's not even like why he hides. Like, what advantage does he have for that? That is also a joke. Like, did he do this because of the pandemic? Because then that's funny, right? Like, he's a germaphobe. You're playing into something deeper. But no, it's just he's a hologram.
Yeah, he's become an agoraphobe and he won't ever leave his house. And so this is the way to keep the stocks up.
Yeah,
something.
And there you go. You
like
have a
that.
Howard Hughes angle to it. Like, that's kind of like that's how you do comedies. You give in some extra layers to it. But anyways, yes, we get a flashback. Luckily, it's only about a half page in length, so it's short. But it's basically we find out that Sandy, while working for I think the Atlantic, she blurts out that she has proof that Jeff Bezos is really a hologram and that he's living on Mars.
Yeah, and when I first read this, my first impression was just WTF. I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Huh? This is what ruined her career. This is, of course, why would she even say that? Of course it ruined her career. She's an idiot, right? But also I'm like, okay, it's too early in the script. Let's see where this goes, right? Like I'm still trying to, at this point, I'm trying to get a feel for, am I reading a script that would align more with the movie Airplane, or with a script that would more line up with like a James Bond movie, right? And I'm like, where are we? Where are we? And so I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm like, okay, I'm interested. Let's keep going and see where this is going to go. Is this funny? Is this stupid? Is this more serious? Is it a little bit of both?
Is the tone supposed to be tongue-in-cheek thriller or absurd comedy? Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going. What's the movie with Henry Cavill as a spy that was based on
Argyle?
No. The older one. The older one from like
Man from
6
Uncle.
years ago.
Man from Uncle.
Yes, that was based on a TV series, right?
Correct.
So I loved that, and that, in fact, to me, that's the best James Bond movie we've had since Casino Royale. like it felt more like James Bond than anything since Casino Royale. That was, to me, was like sort of the last real Bond movie. But so yeah, I felt like, is this going to be like that? Because that movie, that film had so many great. Had these great comedy moments, but it was still a pretty serious action film, and I love that balance. Right? Mm-hmm. Was that Guy Ritchie that did that? Who did that?
I think that was so Guy Ritchie. I know it didn't move. It didn't move well because it didn't translate well to broader audiences, and and here's the other part too. Forced stars such as an Armie Hammer. He's a forced star. Nobody actually liked him for his talent. He comes from a massive amount of money from the Arm & Hammer. He's an Arm & Hammer heir. That's why his name is Armie. They kind of forced him into Hollywood to try and be a star because that's what he wanted to do, and it didn't work out at all for him. I mean, even after being in The Social Network, doing The Lone Ranger, then again doing the Man from Uncle, audiences just saw through him, and they're like, "No, we don't believe this guy," and they don't show up.
Yeah, he was okay. I mean, I just felt like, when I'm reading this script, I kind of thought, is that what it's going to be like? We're going to have these fun tongue-in-cheek moments, right? Or what was that other movie, I Spy?
With Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson.
Yeah, so at this point in the script, I'm like, okay, what is this going to be? So I was ready, right? I'm ready. Let's go to the next step and go to the next scene and show me, like, what's this going to be like? And then, so then what happens next?
Well, we get the premise, which is that, Sandy, hating her life, finds out on Instagram that Margot is taking a week off of social media. No phone, no technology, nothing. She's just spending a week going somewhere else. And Sandy is like, oh my God, I have a vacation. I'm going to relax. I don't have to deal with writing crap about her, all that type of stuff. And then she realizes, based on the Instagram post, I know exactly where she's going. She's going to Fiji because, one, that's the one place she's never gone to before because she never goes to the same place twice. And number two, I've zoomed in so much onto all of her photos and stuff to write about that I've got a second sight when it comes to translating pixelated images, and I can recognize that some of the letters on the passport are the phrase that's associated to Fiji. So that's where she's going to go. I can just put her out of my mind for a week and actually do some real reporting on something else. But because she spouts all this at the office, her boss says, yeah, you're going to Fiji and you're going to follow her and you're going to find out what she's doing and keep reporting on that and make sure you get us pictures of her naked or something to run on our website.
And I did like this. This is a good way to move the plot forward, right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel forced. It felt natural again. So I loved this scene. I'm like, that's what you get. We could all relate to opening your mouth when you should have kept it shut and it bites you in the ass. Like, this was great. I was totally fine with this short scene that moved us to the next plot line or plot thread. So yeah, I was totally great with this.
No, I mean, this was a good inciting incident because you mix in the refusal of the call with the fact of it's also relief, right? Part of the hero's journey is the fact that, oh my God, I don't have to do this week. Like, that's a respite for her. And we get the inverse of that, as opposed to the hero saying, oh, I wish I could go out and do all that stuff. We have the whole thing like, I wish this person would just get as far away from me as possible. I don't want to be anywhere near them on the Hollywood Strip. I just want to have a break. And then you get this assignment saying, listen, either you go to Fiji, which, I as your employer will be paying you to do, and you get some more dirt on her so that we can keep selling papers, or you don't have a job. And it's like, well, that's great. Now you're putting her into an uncomfortable situation. You're doing one of my favorite lessons, which is never make anything easy for your main character, your protagonist.
Conflict.
Yes.
Yep. Conflict. Yep.
Exactly. And so she goes to Fiji. It's not a first class trip. It's basically like, economy, coach, all those types of things. She has a fantasy that the plane goes down in flames and she doesn't have to do this, which I thought is, there's some humor there. That's nice.
Yeah, that was a fun, tight little thing. It didn't take up a lot of time on screen, and it would have just been like one more thing to show you like where her brain's at. So I liked that as well. Yep.
And then we end up, unfortunately, meandering on the island for around 10 pages or so with Sandy kind of learning the lay of the land. Ugh. And it's really horrible because she encounters another journalist who's there to talk about basically
the lunar
power
phases
and lunar power plants, which is really just solar energy bouncing off the moon and hitting Earth, and it's silly.
I didn't quite get that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've seen the technology. It's not it can't really be effective because there's so much energy loss on the reflection of light from the moon to the Earth.
And to her credit, she actually revisits this, right? She ties this, she closes this loop with this character, just a throwaway character, in the last act, which I totally forgot about that guy. And then we see him for a few seconds, and I was like, oh, well done, right? So right. I liked that it wasn't a complete, because I always like when there's a closed loop that was sort of so subtle that I don't know how much I appreciate it closing until it gets closed. You know what I mean? Kind of forget about it.
Right.
And then when it gets closed, you don't go, well, that was pointless. I totally forgot about that guy. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of nice that this came together, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like that was one of those. It didn't take much time, didn't slow down the plot. So there's that guy now. We'll see him back later in the last act. But yeah, she wanders around, and then
she gets into her hotel, which is like this tiny little cabin on the end of this little street.
Described with ants in the corner crawling on stuff. Like it's not very nice.
She bugs her, but then she starts going into town, looking around. She kind of
she finds the bar first, I think.
She goes straight for a bar, and then she ends up finding where Margot is staying, and then starts to do her thing. She starts drinking around her, trying to be subtle, not get noticed. Then she's getting pictures of Margot.
A lot of drinking. Let's again, part of her character.
A lot of drinking.
She loves to drink because she hates her life. This is part of that.
This is her vice.
Development. Yeah.
But yeah, she's getting photos of Margot Ford's in her bikini with stretch marks and stuff, and she's kind of like emailing them to Jordy to file the stories for her, and she's trying to get the heck out of there. And after she sends a couple of articles, she finally talks to her boss and says, "Can I please come back?" And he's like, "Yeah, we got what we need. Let's bring you back. I'll book you a flight." And as she's about to leave, she sees Margot the next morning, right before her flight takes off, passed out over by a dock. And two strangers just kind of check over her body, pick her up, throw her on a boat, and then take her out to this island in the middle, way beyond the Fiji border, in the middle of nowhere. And Sandy's realizing, oh my God, Margot's been kidnapped. And this was kind of weird because up until this point, we never got a sense that Sandy actually cared about what was right or wrong.
No, say it accurately. She doesn't give a shit about Margot.
Yeah, she really doesn't. But for some reason...
She really does. Yeah, so some reason she, instead of you'd think, oh, she saw her get kidnapped by these two dudes. You think she'd be like, that's funny. Sweet, right? I know that sounds callous, but imagine following this person that's a piece of crap for 7 years. You would probably at least say, I'm going to go call the cops, right? But it goes beyond that. At least,
as a tabloid reporter, she should be taking photos of it and then writing an article, Margot Ford getting kidnapped, file it, and then go back on the plane. That's what her character has been set up to be. But instead...
Maybe leave a Post-it note or something. Yeah, that's funny.
But instead, she gets involved. She starts trying to find a way to get to this island, and she's talking to her intern, and we find out that Jordy, her intern, is part of this underground fan club of Margot's, like these super fans that will do anything and everything for her. And there's this massive network.
Yeah, this network of super fans that are in the shadows.
That are in the shadows. And
the League of Shadows.
Essentially. And Jordy says, listen, I found someone that's got a boat. They can take you out to the island and follow up on what's going on with Margot. And I've rescheduled your flight to the next day so you can at least do some legwork here. Just look for the guy in the green shirt. And what we get is that this guy in the green shirt is Sandy's ex-boyfriend, TJ, from when she spent some time on Fiji here as a teenager because her parents moved around a lot because I guess one of them was in the military.
Right. Yep. Military.
And so she fell in love with TJ, and they kept in touch when she became a journalist. And when she burned her career, she stopped returning his calls and emails.
Okay, I'd like to go over this for just a second.
Go for it.
From a scriptwriter's point of view, I would love to have you explain to me something. So we are on page. I look at PDF numbers. Script. This is not PDF number. This is script page number 25.
Okay.
And halfway down, we see this exact exchange right here. TJ says, "I thought it might be you. What's the emergency?" And then the next line after that, she says, "Well, everything is effed. May as well F it deeper."
That's in the action line. Yes, that's not dialogue.
But that is not dialogue.
Yeah.
So that just for the benefit of the reader or the director or what? Because you can't convey that on screen. So can you explain how that works from a script writing standpoint?
Yeah, it's editorializing, and it's something that's been popping up recently. I hate it personally. I don't think it helps. It's basically patronizing the reader. Because you're basically telling them, I know you're too stupid to get what I'm doing here, so I'm just going to spell it out for you. And it disengages for me.
Because if you're writing well, we already know that everything's messed up at this point, right? So you shouldn't have to say that, right?
No,
I mean,
if anything,
so is that what you're conveying? That's why it's lazy. It's kind of like, well, I'm just going to slap you in the face with this situation.
It is because this is a line a director would give to an actor, but the action in the actual screenplay would be Sandy throws up her arms, rolls her eyes, and then just spurts out, and then says her filing line, like, I needed to chase down a kidnapped celebrity because my life is one big disappointment. Like, that's how you convey all that type of stuff, because you want to give us something that tells us a little bit about the character with each action line to a degree, or at least set the stage a little bit more. This one here is setting the stage in the sense that I'm telling you what my thought process is for this scene, as opposed to hooking you in with my ability to write and convey the thought process without you realizing it. Like instead of saying, "Hey, remember like decades ago where stand-up comics could actually just use Michael Jackson as a punchline to any joke that they had, and people would laugh because they knew Michael Jackson." That's what this is essentially saying. It's like, yeah, Michael Jackson. Oh, I get it. Yeah. And then you move on. It's so low-hanging fruit, easy, boring. It doesn't convey. Listen, it's starting to become the norm, which is terrible because it doesn't bode well for it doesn't bode well for the generation of writers I'm competing against.
Because we're already losing a lot of nuance in writing, which I agree sucks. It's They beat you over the head with stupid concepts like this. But this goes back to show don't tell, correct? This is ultimately what's at the core of this. You need to.
And this is a telling thing, but it's a very brief telling. The other part too is that it's basically unnecessarily conveying something that you should be able to do quickly anyways. Like, you just don't need to go to this level to say, oh, well, everything's effed, might as well F it up deeper. Well, who's saying this? Like, if the writer's saying this, or if this is Sandy's thought, if it's Sandy's thought, there's a better way to do that. Again, through action, to have the actor be like, well, how would I just convey it through other words? Like, the whole idea is that it's superficial on the surface. This is what I want you to feel. This to me would make sense if it was in a book, in a novel. And you're seeing, and it's in italics. It's in italics, and it's the character's thoughts, and we're seeing them. That'd be fine. And
but in this, it just stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, because this is basically taking the screenwriting note of, like, your script is supposed to cover the bare essentials and not go really much any deeper. And there's some truth to that. But the thing is, you have to find the balance. You can't go so bare essential to the point where it's like you're at a bar with your friends and you're just telling them the story. There is something that works with that verbally, as the way you and I talk, or whenever we're talking in public spaces with our friends and family, and we're just having a fun time. But then there's something else when it comes to, oh, you're reading it on the page. Yeah, you get that sense that you're at a restaurant, at a bar, talking to someone that's telling you the story. But where's the details that a director or an actor can look at to actually say, it's no longer I'm listening to someone else's story. It's I'm now a part of this story as a reader, as a potential talent in this.
Right. I'm thinking it'd be like at the end of Lord of the Rings that and I'm describing it to you. You've never read the book, but you're okay with spoilers. And I say, oh, script, it's so good at the very end, like Frodo and Sam are so tired. They're exhausted and they can barely even move. And they're only like 100 yards from Mount Doom and they're just exhausted from everything that's happened. That's how I would describe that to you, but that's not how you would write the story, right? You would write the story in such a way that there's so many details leading up to that moment. You already know they're exhausted. You already know they're tired. You already know all these things.
Well, if anything,
Yeah,
you'd get like let's see, what's a good parallel of what this type of editorializing would be done for this. So for Frodo and Bilbo, sorry, Frodo and Sam, it'd be like, they're as tired as all shit. That's what they would say.
yes,
And it's like,
yes, thank you. You nailed it right there. Yeah, yeah, and in the story it says that, right? Like we have all this great stuff, and then there's just this one double spaced line, right? It
Yep.
totally jumps out on the page, and it's like they were tired as shit.
and,
Okay,
and it's like,
gotcha.
okay, it's not. And the other part too is like, okay, yeah, that gets across the point, but it doesn't really paint a visual. Where you really want to say is like Sam and Frodo exhausted to all lengths, clawing at the sand, just trying to get inch closer and closer, but no will of strength to
Yeah.
meet the entrance. That's something that paints a bit more of a visual to it. Yes, it takes a little longer to read, but the whole idea is that you're trying to build something to it. Here, it's more like, I'm just going to do something funny, quick, just to get to the point, or use this action line here as an excuse to justify why Sandy is going to be so forthcoming to TJ at this moment,
Yeah.
even though it'd be far more interesting if she kind of held it to the chest. She says, my story is getting away from me. It's over there. I need my deadline. Like, that's easier. Instead, she just kind of vomits out exposition, which is also not very good. And it's also not very fun because anytime you have I love dramatic irony, because dramatic irony is fun. It can be done well, it can be done terribly, but either way, the fact that there's an effort being made shows you that there's at least one level of writing skill to them. And dramatic irony is a sense of, we as the audience know something that one or both of the characters does not. One of the best examples is a Hitchcock film where two people are at a dinner table, they're talking, and underneath the table is a time bomb ready to go off. We know there's a bomb there, they don't. So we feel tension because we realize that thing is getting closer to zero and that's going to blow up and they're never going to find out. Or maybe they might, but we don't know because, we're on edge. We are invested into that situation. That's if you can find those moments and you can make them work, which is not hard to do. I mean, listen, there's if you want to talk about something more recent where they do dramatic irony, but it's not really done too well because there's a bunch of issues surrounding that. We've got recently The Acolyte that aired. And one of the sisters switched. They did the Parent Trap thing. They switched sisters, and we know that they switched. But one of the characters that is interacting with them is playing along, or at least maybe doesn't know that they've been switched. So now it's a ticking time clock. Oh, how long is it going to take for him to find out? And when he does, what's going to happen? On paper, that works. The way it's executed, kind of silly, because there's certain tells and setups that they've done that within that framework, that setting, that would say this is not how that type of gimmick would work. It's also a repetition of what they did in, I think, the second episode where the twin played as the other twin. So you're repeating the same thing over and over again. And it's harder to get away with when certain rules within your universe say that can't happen in this way. So if you want to play with dramatic irony, you want to do something a little bit different, and you want to make sure stays within the
I look
premise.
at something. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I hate when I talk over you. I'm sorry. And I feel like that's something that you can rough in your first draft or second draft, and then you can polish that, those layers of it as you
refine
rewrite.
it, get it in better order because that's what you need to do as a writer.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing: this very moment we're talking about, I actually highlighted Sandy's response.
Sure, go for it.
And here's my notes. Here's my note. I highlighted it and I put yuck, bad dialogue. That's my note. Because Sandy says this. Everyone who's listening, this is Sandy's response. Tell me how natural this sounds let's back up just for a second. TJ, she needs a boat. She runs to the guy in the green shirt. Oh, it's him, her ex-boyfriend from 7 years ago. And he says, thought it might be you. What's the emergency? And she says this. I need it to chase down a kidnapped celebrity because my life is one big disappointment. Is that what you wanted to know? Also, my only friend is a fish. So yes, if you could spare your boat from whatever selfless hot guy things you're doing right now and also hold the judgment, that'd be great.
Yeah.
What did I just read? I had to do like a triple take on that. I'm like, this is who talks like this? Who just dumps all this information in such an awkward way? And it seems so out of place because I know she can write. I'm how many pages into the script at this point? 26. And I'm like, what is this? Who talks like this? This is really strange to me. Whatever, like, so yes, if you could spare your boat from whatever selfless hot guy things you're doing right now. So she's taking a poke at the fact that he's a selfless guy and he's hot. Anyway, I don't even know how to break this down. I just hated this. Like I said, my synopsis of this paragraph of words was yuck, bad dialogue. That's my take.
It's the type of dialogue you'd hear where if I was TJ, I'd be like, trip. I would kick the motor and then have the boat sail off and be like, oh, sorry, I guess can't take you. Bye. You know.
Yeah.
Because it's not an argument to win over the help that's kind of being offered, that's soft offered in this scene. It's really just obnoxious.
Yeah, she's playing the damsel in distress, but she's doing it with a bitchy attitude, kind of, right? Yeah. And I'm like, it didn't feel natural to me. It felt very, very jumbled. I'm like, okay, rewrite that. And then when you come back, I'm going to make you rewrite it again, just because I know you will need to. Like, it's just so rough. So that one really stood out to me. But let's keep moving through the story.
I mean, this scene, it's a good scene because this is kind of setting up your inciting incident. It needs to be a pleading. It's like, I am on my knees, begging for you because my job's at stake here. And he's just like, you don't have to be like, because then this would convey a bit more to TJ. It's like, you don't have to be on your knees. Just tell me why you ghosted me. She's like, well, it's a long story. He's like, well, it's a long boat ride, and there you go. That's how you get into it. And then you can skip the story part because we already have enough semblance of it there. Then you cut to them approaching the island. It's like, well, I can understand you're embarrassed, but you kind of forgot that we still get the internet here in Fiji. And so I've been following you all this time. And then that just makes it even more where she's realizing now that she ruined the good thing through her ghosting him when he actually didn't care because he was learning it all the ways and he still liked her. Like that's the setup that you would want to do for this type of scene.
Very similar to the Fall Guy with his story. Like he got injured at the beginning. He felt like if I'm not this tough Fall Guy, she's not going to like me. She's not going to love me anymore. She's not going to want me anymore. So he ends up ghosting her and he creates his own nightmare by doing that, right?
But that goes even further on the Fall Guy thing because it's not just the tough guy thing. It's the whole he didn't know. He basically says, I didn't know how to express myself to convey what I was feeling to you, and I was thinking about it so long to the point where
I waited too long.
I waited too long. I was so worried and just trying to get it right that I didn't even make the effort, and then as a result of that, my lack of making the effort from your perspective made you go away. And that's still my fault. I'm like, there you go. That's some depth. That's some good writing.
Yeah, and I know. Quick side note: I know that Andre at Midnight's Edge keeps talking about how he feels like Beekeeper is the best movie so far this year, best action movie at least. And I think the Fall Guy, it caught me so off guard. I love it. I love the Fall Guy. I love all of the '80s throwback, not little things. They even did the $1 Million Man sound effect. It wasn't quite in the right spot when they used it, but it was there. But the Miami Vice theme, dude, I watched the live action Miami Vice show at Universal Studios in 1994, whenever it was back then as a kid. I was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. And so when that Miami Vice music started playing and he's on the boat backwards with his hands cuffed, I was like, bring it on. Anyway, that's a whole nother show. I would love to talk about that.
But that also has another flaw in it too, where the Ryan Gosling character says, oh, I used to do the stunt boats on Miami Vice. I'm like, Miami Vice ended when you were still a teenager, man. There's no way you were doing stunt boats on that show.
No. I think he references the actual show at Universal Studios, not the TV show. But I'm not sure.
It's hard to tell at this point, right? Because he's
But either way, that movie, I was like, well, I'll give it a chance, and I freaking love that movie. But this reminded me of that. To bring it back to this script, it reminded me of that, and I thought, it was done much better in the Fall Guy than what we kind of see here with her and TJ. So they get on board, they go to the island.
She sneaks in, she's looking. She's not looking in a great. She's wearing tan shorts and a t-shirt and a burlap bag. Over her shoulder type of thing. So she doesn't look like she belongs on this island that is filled with millionaires. And the guy
real quick, he doesn't even take her. That's where I thought this was going. He doesn't even take her. He's like, here's the keys. And so she goes there and just drops the boat off on the beach, which I thought was kind of weird.
She takes the boat and he just stays there behind him. Like, that's a beta move because, dude, you're a guy, you're in love with this girl, even though she left you years ago. You have an opportunity to help her. It's like, you tag along. Like you
Spend
win
some
that
time with
back.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm glad that stood out to you too, because I felt like that was weird. But yeah, so keep going.
So we get into this. We get to this island. It's fancy resort. We find out early on because part of the 10, 15 pages of Sandy just kind of getting the lay of the land. She meets this character named Alex, who is early 30s, and he's this millionaire pretending to be a billionaire, and he owns the resort that is on this island that Margot has been taken to, and she's trying to like mingle in there, and she can't, so she heads into the washroom. She tries to figure out a way to kind of like, Jamie Lee Curtis herself from True Lies with the outfit that she has.
Clean up a bit.
It doesn't work to her benefit, and I think, okay, that's kind of clever and funny. And then luckily, and this part made my eyes roll because it's such a plot contrivance.
It's so convenient.
A woman comes in, she's got some lipstick smeared on her red dress, and she's got an assistant with a whole bunch of other outfits with her, and they're just kind of changing outfits, and she throws the red dress into the trash, changes, and leaves. And there's the red dress that Sandy needs to wear in order to blend in with the rest of the party. She can cover up the lipstick smear or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's way too convenient, man. Like, it just...
Yeah. I think she threw away her lipstick and all the extra dresses, and so she grabbed that one and then put on the lipstick. I think that's how I remember that, but who cares? It's a minor thing. Like, but yeah, conveniently, here's a plot. What would you call it?
Yeah.
Contrivance. And it's like those are the ones that it's too coincidental that it feels kind of dumb. Is that kind of a good way?
It's when the universe grants a gift to the main character that should otherwise not be possible, because it also takes away from the main character from being inventive in order to pull off the obstacle that they're facing, right? So if she were like, oh, I'm in tan, I'm in beige, I don't look very flattering, what can I do? She could look out there and she'd be like, okay, well, maybe, the wait staff has something that looks similar to what she's wearing. Maybe she can play along with that. Maybe she can follow them, and maybe she can steal their clothes or something, like, mingle around, do something.
This is like a super ritzy hotel. All she has to do is one of the what do they call those carts that people hang all their clothes on as they're pushing them up to their rooms? Like
coat racks.
She could, yeah, a rolling
carts,
coat rack.
Yeah.
And boom, there's a dress. She just looks back, looks forward, looks left, looks right, slips it off, and then dips into the restroom. Would have felt more natural.
Or you lean into the sexiness of the glitz and glamour of the party. She strips down to her underwear and then jumps into the pool. That's it. Easy. Nobody cares about a woman in her underwear jumping into a pool at a party like that. It's like, oh, we get it. Yeah.
That's true.
And then she gets out and she's like, "Can someone hand me a towel?" And then there you go. Now she's, the pool party girl. Got a little bit of attention. People are like, okay, back to the normal thing. And now she's able to justify her thing because she's hanging around the pool, which we've already established in this hotel. It's there. And she's wearing a towel and she's like drinking champagne and stuff. And she's able to mingle without any issues. But because we have, there's stunning women in bikinis hanging off the arms of people. There's millionaires, pitching board investors. There's guests. There's clingers. There's all these types of people. And it's like, okay, this is a great thing. It reminds me of a scene in X-Men First Class where Moira Taggart's character, who's a spy who's been completely rewritten from her comic thing, she's looking at the Hellfire Club and she's seeing women going in there essentially in lingerie, and she's like, I'm just going to go in my underwear and that's how I'm going to blend in, and that works, makes sense.
Okay, so hit pause. At this point in the script, when you first read it, are you feeling the comedy vibe in this script?
No.
Me neither. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. So right here in this moment, in this story, I highlighted this one thing, and we had this sort of montage as she's walking through the party. She hears these different people talking, millionaires and billionaires talking, right?
Yes.
And we just get these little snippets of their dialogue. And one of them, like, I rolled my eyes and I started laughing because it was so dumb, right? And I thought, oh, is this the comedy? Well, first I thought this is stupid, and then I thought, wait, maybe it's supposed to be funny, stupid, right? Mm-hmm. And it's right here on page 27. Man's arm. I guess that's the shot. We just see a shot of a man's arm. Right. We don't see his face. And he says, well, that's why I donate 0.001% of sales to the Dolphins. Giving back is really why you get into this biz. And again, like that other line I read, I'm like, what? Who talks like this?
So what's funny is from that line alone, because I rolled my eyes too, because I'm like, oh, this woman has never met a billionaire before. Because billionaires don't use percentages with what they donate. They actually use their round dollar amount. That's why I donated millions to the sales to help my sales profits to help the Dolphins. You don't know that the millions equals 0.001%. He just says the millions because that's what it's about. People recognize millions. No billionaire says, oh, if a billionaire says I donate 0.001% of sales to the Dolphins, everybody knows, oh, you're cheaping out. Like it's so
honestly,
obvious.
this came off to me because it was so okay, this is what I wrote. This is my note on this. I said, more weak writing. Are we entertaining, or I don't know what I wrote there, trying to highlight how quote stupid shallow, how stupid shallow rich guy is in the laziest way possible. That's what I wrote on my comment on that note. And then if you go down a couple more lines, it says ranty billionaire. This is another bad one. And he says, I don't just want to be a billionaire. I want to be a space billionaire.
It's like, I don't even know the difference.
No, it's like I don't want to, I guess, infantilizing a billionaire, right? Where it's like, I don't want to be a cowboy. I want to be a space cowboy. You know, it just was so bad. And now now that I've read the whole script, I'm like, okay, the space thing is kind of a theme, right? It is a theme. It is. It's not kind of. It is a theme. But I don't know if it was supposed to be at this point in the script. So if I was watching this movie, I'd be like, what the hell? What? I want to be a space billionaire. Because in fact, at this point in the story, we've established that her whole space theory about Bezos cost her job because it was so stupid and crazy, right?
Right. Because
so
if you want to have fun with billionaires saying, I want, like, Bezos and his rocket that looks like a dick, you know what? Screw that. I'm making a rocket that looks like a nice pair of boobs because boobs are better. You know, like, that's kind of what a billionaire would say.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this is another example that we talked about earlier where, yes, these people are being written like frat boys or like, you know, complete morons and idiots. And yes, there are rich, spoiled people that probably don't know how to grammar. All right. I'm going to say it like that on purpose. But this doesn't come off like that. This comes off as someone who really is way out of their league in how to write people like this. And I don't know any billionaires, but I think I could probably write them better. I know I could write them better than this. Like this, come on, give me a break. Just write them like a normal person, add a little snootiness and maybe some complete indifference to their fellow humans, and I think you're pretty much there.
Pretty much, because most billionaires have a certain cadence of how they talk because they've been kind of groomed to talk that way, but it's their kids that haven't got there yet that talk like this. And that's the problem. Like we're talking like between 12 and 20.
Yes. The spoiled brats. Then you're going to get this type of dialogue. Yes, I totally agree. And so it felt like it just didn't, again, I'll go back to it. It didn't feel natural to me. This just stuck out. I'm like, this is dumb. Let's move on. So anyway, yeah, that's where I was at that point in the script.
Pretty much. And so what we cover through this field of the hotel where Sandy is kind of looking around to try and find where Margot is held, and she finally hears Margot's voice through through a pool at a pool house on the other side, and Margot's like, it's in room 103, it's looking bleak. And then Sandy kind of like jumps through the tiki hut pool house, whatever, and then kind of quote unquote rescues Margot, but it's not a kidnapping, and we find out Margot is like, yeah, I was just tangled in her phone cord, charging cord. And it's nothing crazy. There's a character named the Nautical Billionaire who finds Sandy in the room, and then it's like, oh, I didn't have an affair, I did cross the line, my wife and I family, and all I care about, and then just runs out of the room and
yes, he came out of the bathroom, I think. So apparently they were in there together. But the only description you get is nautical billionaire. And then he says, I did not have an affair. I did cross the line. My wife and family are all I care about in this world. Now, to me, this would have been a first draft placeholder when I'm trying to get through the story, set the scene, and I write this very basic dialogue because I know when I come back later, I'm going to write something that actually sounds like a human being speaking in this situation. And so again, this is one of the ones I had highlighted. And what did I say here for the note? I just put comedy ? Like it was just so weird. So here we are again with really bad dialogue. And we will find out later this nautical billionaire is more than just a throwaway character, but yes,
crazy.
It was weird.
Not only is he more than a throwaway character, I keep on forgetting that he's there because she changes his descriptor from nautical billionaire to just nautical, and you're like, okay,
yes.
and then you're like, well, I don't know who this guy is. Like, you've given me no descriptor of all the other characters with the crazy obscure descriptors of like a Richard Branson type and all those things and Pierce Morgan and whatnot. You gave us nothing for nautical billionaire, yet you use them kind of frequently here and there. Through the second and third act.
Yeah, it goes from nautical billionaire to nautical to not gonna care anymore about who this guy is.
Right. And basically what ends
But
up
yeah.
happening is Margot, like he storms out and Margot swipes his VIP lanyard. And if you're reading the script, guys, prepare to read lanyard a lot throughout this. It is used so much to the point where I think, I think she is really obsessed with them and thinks that they're hugely important and that they're used at special events in this case. I happen to have been to a couple of these. Lanyards are never used in these types of parties, especially with what happens at the climax, because your invitation is your pass to get in there. You don't need anything else after that. Like, the security is so tight around whatever event you're in, you don't get in unless you're supposed to be there. They don't give you lanyards that just allow you. It's not like going to a music concert with the backstage pass. It's literally really way more sophisticated than that.
Or no, this is how I felt. You think so much like me. I was like, okay, I don't picture a bunch of billionaires they've got their own island. This isn't a small island. This isn't even like a gated community in Miami. This is like an island filled with millionaires and billionaires, okay? They aren't going to be walking around with a bunch of lanyards on like they're at a freaking sales convention in Detroit, right? Like that's not at a hotel. This isn't what this is. And so yes, that felt very weird to me. But they're used as plot
devices, yeah.
Plot devices, thank you, in different ways, in scenes. And so in a way I'm like, okay, I get it. I get why they're there, but I think you could rewrite it in a better way that you didn't need those. But right here in this moment, if you'll let me script, I highlighted Margot's first big reveal on who she really is right here, right? But it's leading up to that, I should say. And I highlighted we're on page 30. And Margot says, "No, Sandy Wilkinson, full name, you're insane. You spent the last 7 years obsessed with me, following me around, trying to wreck my life with nasty gossip you write on that weird little iPad and snap-on keyboard." And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, exposition much? Plus, who the hell talks like this? And Sandy, what's wrong with this very handy for a reporter? Margot, iPads are for boomers at Disney World. Sandy, well, visors are for tennis professionals. I would have just said tennis pros, but whatever. Margot, pulling out the big guns for our first fight, I see. Look, who cares how I got here? The party's going to be lit as F, and you hate fun. What did I just read again, script? This is another time where I'm like, if I'm watching Airplane, the movie, right, and it has bad dialogue, it's because it has a reason, right? Like you were talking about, there's a nuance or there's another level, another layer to the comedy. And this just feels like, I'm like, wait, is this supposed to be bad and cheesy and funny? Like, but the first paragraph was just almost all exposition. It felt so forced to me. It felt so forced. Hey, script, I know that you've been emailing me for the last 5 years, right? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't talk like that. That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I'll shut up. That just felt like that whole thing was just so awkward.
Well,
another awkward.
It was
writing.
lazy exposition to convey that Margot knows more about Sandy than she should know. And I'm like, this is a very weak setup. Like, it's just really weak. And,
and just further down, Sandy says, about saving her. I just didn't want blood on my hands because that would have been annoying. That doesn't even make sense. So I saved
like
you because I didn't want blood on my hands because blood on my hands would be annoying. What?
Yeah, it sounds like 12-year-old girl dialogue. It just doesn't sound like someone in their 40s who does this all the time. It would be more like
who writes for a living, so she should know how to speak very well as well. Like,
if anything, she should have said, "I was trying to save you because, as much as I hate it, you are the reason I still have a job."
Yes, it's not that I like you. It's not that I love you. I did it for my own benefit, so I can keep the lights on at home. Like, seriously, that's all it would take.
And since I see you're fine here, I'm going to head out. Bye. And then Sandy tries to go back to her boat, and someone has towed it away, which is weird.
Because I guess she parked in a towing zone on a private island beach. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, what did they do? They called the Coast Guard and said, "Hey, there's a boat here we don't recognize. Can you pick this up?" And it's like, well, if you find a boat that you don't recognize, shouldn't security be on alert for someone that's not there, and you're just ignoring that aspect?
Or who gives an F? They're in the middle of a huge event, and it's a private island. So you're just going to assume every boat that's there is there because it's supposed to be, because they have there's so much other security going on the island. So, but it's thin. But okay, it's not. It doesn't totally derail the plot. Like, okay, fine, whatever. The boat
but it traps her on the island, which I'm like, okay, traps her on the island. That's good. Don't make things easy for your hero. Got it. And so what does Sandy do? Well, she goes back. She tries to find something somewhere else to go, and she tries to get into the party again. Maybe she'll get some gossip. Maybe, like, we don't know, but she just is trying to say, like, there's literally a line where she says, "We'll see how much I hate fun." So she's trying to go in there to actually like do something and at least get, I don't know, just have some fun at this party. And she manages to sneak back in. And then we're going through, basically, like, she stumbles into this VIP wing conference room and overhears Alex talking about their biggest plans that's going to start tonight at midnight. And that there's this tech guy there who's like, well, there's a risk to it. It's not huge, but fairly small. And
Dan, the tech guy, she just gives him a 3-letter name, Dan.
Dan.
And give us a quick, who's Alex again? Let's
Alex
remind
is
everyone.
the guy who owns this island and the hotel on it, and he's the millionaire who wishes he was a billionaire. He's what we mentioned in the synopsis is that he's orchestrating this plot that's happening tonight.
He's our main protagonist, and
no, he's the main antagonist.
Sorry, antagonist,
yep.
And he is very transparent. Thin. I don't know how to explain it. He's just very vanilla.
Yeah,
he's
pretty plain and forgettable.
Nothing stands out until he does something really dumb at the very end, where I was just like, this is stupid. So she sneaks in, and
she's over here.
I kind of feel
stuff.
like at this point in the story, I kind of feel like we're just going in circles. Is that kind of how you felt? I'm like, wait, I feel like we're kind of, it's different this time around, but we're on a carousel or on a merry-go-round, and I'm like, why are we taking? It's just taking too long to get going.
So here's one of the things that I can tell that this person has not written many action films, and that being is that she gets certain things in bad order. So in this case here, we have a setup where she's leaving the island. She's having no problem leaving the island. She goes to where a boat should be. It's been towed away. She's stuck on the island. You're like, oh, that's kind of good, but it's kind of low stakes because she's stuck on an island and there's parties going on here. What really should have happened is that as she was making her way to go home, she overhears Alex and Dan talking about something happening with some risk. And in that instance, that's when the security guard finds her and be like, you're not supposed to be here, and he knocks her out.
And you just cut 5 minutes out of the film and shorten the film, which it needed. So I love that. That was awesome.
You get straight to the point, but you hold on to that idea of, oh, the boat's no longer there, so that when you get to the next part of the stage of, oh, we have to get off the island, and they go to where the boat should be and it's been towed away, now you're stuck because now the stakes are higher, and now they're stuck on this island, and there's danger and there's peril, and they can't get off, so they have to find another way. So again, you escalate the difficulty another tier by just delaying that and getting straight to the point of conflict, because what happens is in the 33 to 35 page spread, we get probably the reveal that made me go, I wish this was a better script, because this is really too good for this script.
It finally, when we get to the reveal, it finally was like, oh, okay, finally, it's cool. Something cool is about to happen. And I felt like it just took too long to get here. So yeah, and we're going back to the bones of the script, what we talked a little bit off before we started the show tonight, and that is that the bones of this story are cool, very cool premise, very great idea. It just feels like I had to watch an infomercial before I got to the movie. You know what I mean? It's just like let's go. And the opening scene with Michelle Obama on paper again looks great. Like, oh my gosh, this is a funny situation. But it didn't really, like, that started good, and then we just really slowed down. So I don't know. Let's not waste time on how we'd fix it. But yeah. So now here we are. And now is the real reveal. We finally see who Margot really is, and I don't want to spoil it. So you describe as much as you want, because I know we kind of worry about spoilers.
Well, this part here, it's part of it's the end of the first act. It transitions us into the second. So I mean, anyone reading the script, they're going to do it. Primarily, we don't spoil how the ending is resolved, because that's usually the climax. That's the thing that gets people to really talk about the movie at the end. With this screenplay here, the gimmick, which is already alluded to in the synopsis, is that so Sandy, she's trapped in an infrared sauna, and she's being interrogated by a security guard, and it looks like she's going to be killed. And all of a sudden, Margot bursts in with a massive gun and just blows the head off of the security guard, brains and bits everywhere. And
yeah, I liked it. It was well described. It made me laugh.
It was like, oh, this is actually like, a page of screenplay. And and here's the thing that I wish we had more of, because there's this line that says Margot sighs, it was only a matter of time, really. I'm like, oh wait, that's a good conveyor of what we just had. But then it will go into Margot morphs from wobbly jello lady into a force more fierce than all 7 bonds combined. And we find out that Margot is a spy for the CIA, and that her whole singing career, all of her drunken stupor and her embarrassing stuff is all her disguise,
Cover.
so that she
Yes.
can get pretty much anywhere in the world without anyone questioning her or even taking her seriously. And Sandy has unwittingly been helping this disguise grow in strength with her tabloid reporting.
Margot's, hold on, I got to read this line. Margot's line after she blows that dude's heads off, that guy's head off. What? I shot that? Is he dead? No. Checks. And right in the brains. Ew. My people are going to have fun covering this up. And here's the thing. I know I read that very poorly, but I could actually see, like, in character, this would actually be kind of fun. Like, I could see, like, you know, of course, the obvious connection here would be like Margot Robbie as she plays Harley Quinn being crazy, doing something like this. And I'm like, okay, I can see that. This would be kind of funny on set, or on screen, but it doesn't really make sense, because if she's dropping character to save her life and blow this dude's brains off, why does she instantly go back into crazy, weird Margot mode?
Right.
That felt weird to me, right? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because ideally what you'd want to do, I mean, they try to convey this into the script by saying basically the head explodes, and then behind the body as it drops is Margot with a massive gun. But
then listen, right after that, as Margot drops her brace stance, pirouetting into a drunken sway. So she goes right from pulling the trigger to going right back into Margot and then saying this weird line that I just read. So I'm like, why would she do that? She just, I mean, obviously her cover's blown. I mean, almost literally, she blew this dude's head off. And so why even do that? Just be like, she should just sigh and look at Sandy and be like, well, that was messier than I expected. You know, something like that. She shouldn't go right back into weird Margot mode. You know, it just felt weird.
It did feel weird, because ideally if you wanted to hold up the illusion and not have the obvious telegraph of like proper position and back into drunken stance, it would be bang, the guy drops and then she drops the gun. She's like, ow, that burns my hand. And then she starts like stumbling and then tries to pick up the gun again, because then that's maintaining the cover a bit more convincingly. But in this here, it's like, no, we're not even going to try with that. We're just going to go straight into it. And now she's this really important spy. And unfortunately, instead of Margot doing what a spy should do, which is either knock out Sandy or just get her out there, she just starts saying like, yeah, I'm an undercover agent for the CIA. I fake passed out by those stupid guys' yacht so I could get over here and investigate some evil stuff, because they've always got to make men think it's their idea. And then you showed up and compromised my entire operation. Like, that's way too much exposition. It's more like, you're a spy? Sure, it's going to be in my next movie. I'm just training, like, you know, just play into it more. And
yeah. And so here's the thing. Then here's the 2 lines from Sandy. Are you an effing spy? Margot. Underlined. I'm a effing spy. So, okay, here's the thing. If this is a comedy and that is the line, I'm on board, dude. That's great. That's awesome. That's hilarious. But I'm still where it's somewhere in between, like an action movie and or a spy movie and a comedy. Like, well, okay, I guess, if this is delivered well and acted well and shot well. But again, I don't think that's going to save me, because yet it's really not a comedy, is it? And so it just fills me, those 2 lines that could be delivered very powerfully. I think that's how they were written and how they were meant. Instead, it felt kind of empty. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're an effing spy. I'm a effing spy. Like, you know what I mean? Less is more in some dialogue situations. This would work great, but because we haven't really built the foundation well enough as a viewer to go, what is this movie? I'm 34 pages into the script. Is it a comedy, or is it serious, or is it fun? And so that was hard for me too. That was just something that stood out to me.
The tone is all over the place, and part of me thinks that she's trying to replicate The Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy. It's a formula that Judd Apatow used, which is he takes a drama script, he puts in comedic actors, he's like, tell jokes in between. And it's like, that doesn't really work too well, because a story you have to come to that type of tone naturally. You can't just force it in there through convenience of having funny actors play serious parts and then throw in comical lines, because when they're doing that in the moment, it doesn't actually have a connective tissue to the overarch of the story. And that's why movies like The Heat, although it did okay, not so great. There's the spy movie with a lot of Melissa McCarthy movies where they are essentially dramas injected with some comedy through improv or what have you. they don't land as well.
Or like what we got with more and more with in the Marvel films, right? Where we
Yeah,
just got all these like one-line comedy things. It became part of the beats of the film, where it's like we don't need these. Like it's great in Deadpool, but we don't need it
and the
in every
frequency
single
is
movie.
too high, because if you want to
Yeah.
have a serious drama movie that has a little bit of jokes, one of the best examples of that, especially in the action genre like this, is Lethal Weapon.
Oh yeah.
It is. I mean, I would sometimes I would point to like Beverly Hills Cop, but Beverly Hills Cop has a tonal issue. In the first one, it's a bit more straightforward of a film in the first one, but it's a little bit of a tonal issue with the comedy back and forth. But Lethal Weapon nails it, because you know when there's kind of a joke, and it works because the joke is at the expense of one of the characters. It's not just a joke to make people laugh. It's like there's something buried within it, within the character, and it works out really well, but it doesn't dominate the story.
Like banana in the tailpipe.
Yeah, like, well, Banana in the Tailpipe, that's a funny gimmick because it's like, oh, that's how you disable a cop car so we can get away. But I'm talking about like the strip club monologue that Eddie Murphy has.
Oh yeah.
That he's talking
Okay,
to Rosewood and Taggart. And it's like, okay, this is really like stopping the thing cold, but it's also like a setup to show how good of a cop Murphy is, because he spots the two guys, basically sizing up the club ready to do a thing to rob it. And it's like, okay, great, but everything leading up to that is a little bit too much of a distraction that kind of fits. I mean, it works for Eddie Murphy. He sells it. He makes it fun. But like, I'm sitting back and I'm watching. I'm like, yeah, the tone of this movie is about a serious crime, murder of his best friend, and he's telling this joke, which is okay because he's trying to make friends with these guys because he knows he's going to need them. And the level of what's going on here just feels a little bit out of place. And we never come back to that same level of comedy in any of the subsequent Beverly Hills films. But on the Lethal Weapon side of things, that comedy is consistent in quality all the way through, even in Lethal Weapon 3, which is also a mess of a movie, because they were kind of like rewriting it as they were shooting it. It still kind of works because these guys understand the characters, they understand what they're doing, and they know how to bring gravitas into it. Here in this script, I don't think it's been refined enough between the relationships or who Margot is and who Sandy is for them to actually have that result. That what I suspect is what is the target here, is that this is supposed to be kind of like now a buddy cop adventure with with a spy veneer. And
and we're seeing the start of that, which makes it one of the most critical points. We need to see some foreshadowing of what this dynamic is going to be.
Right, and this is technically their very first interaction.
Right, because now all of the masks are off, and here's what we've got. And in fact, there was one line on this note of comedy, of good comedy, right? I liked the line from Margot right here where she says, "It's a thing. Catch up. You think Ben Affleck made it because he was good? That one was a mistake, if you ask me. Square peg, round hole. Should have put him at airport security."
Yeah.
So she's straight up admitting that in this world, Ben Affleck also is a spy.
Yeah.
and digging his acting skill, because now she's just revealed to all of us watching that Ben Affleck isn't an actor. He's actually a CIA spy, and in fact she's one that she doesn't approve of. And that's saying something coming from Margot, who plays this complete train wreck or hot mess. Let's be accurate, she's a hot mess. But
yes.
so I like that. I thought that actually worked. But again, it's just like this nice little piece of whipped cream floating in the poop. I'm like, it's good, but at least I found something positive. I like that.
But I will say this premise, like this reveal and this premise, is brilliant, because I'm like, this is kind of taking the whole spy genre into a much needed, refreshing angle, which is, oh, what if someone like a trashy Lindsay Lohan meets Paris Hilton type, who the whole world is embarrassed by, is actually just putting on a veneer of a disguise and is really the super spy. I'm like, that's a cool hook, because that's the best disguise ever. I mean, it's making fun of the disguises for spies, which Austin Powers did, with the fact that Austin Powers, his day job is that he's a professional photographer, but really he's a spy for the British Secret Service. Here, the day job is that she's a singer who has a social media following that's constantly embarrassing herself, but she's got super fans that allow her easy access into all these high posh parties and mingling with all these billionaires and influential people, and she's really a spy there that's just using those connections to save the world. And
Yeah, hiding in plain sight. I do love it. I love the premise. I totally agree. I think this would be awesome
I'm
if
like,
done well.
this premise is way too good for this writer.
Yeah, and I could have swore I've seen it before though. Haven't we seen any movies or TV shows where there is a premise where a celebrity is actually a spy? I know I've seen
Well,
something like that. I
they've
just
had
can't
some
think of
where
what it is.
like respected celebrities are spies.
Oh, not train wrecks of
Not train
celebrities.
wrecks,
Okay.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
gimmick that I thought sets this apart. That makes it kind of clever. It's like, oh my god, it's a train wreck who actually is a very accomplished spy. But then it starts
Yeah.
getting into
Yeah. Courtney Love. Courtney Love. That's what I'm thinking
yeah.
of. She's very Courtney Love, just a complete train wreck. And remember that shot, Courtney Love, was it at the New Year's Eve celebration or whatever? She literally falls off the stool on MTV. Remember that?
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, she's laughing so hard, she's so drunk, she just falls off out of frame of the camera. and what's his face? The guy who used to host all the MTV stuff back then was like, looked at her, just like, oh my god, what do I do? Yeah, because in a way, that's a cool twist. Is you've got this person who, yes, they're famous, but also a lot of people want to just look away from, right? People either hate her or love her. And so it would definitely open up some situations for some really fun, creative choices, writing choices, to have them in some unique situations. And God knows we need more original stuff in Hollywood right now instead of all these remakes and prequels and sequels and everything. So yeah, I agree. You said it well. Like, this is such a cool premise. It's just very underutilized in this specific script.
Yeah, because I think, oh man, if Shanrah came up with this idea on her own, which I will give her the benefit of the doubt that she did, I think it was something that was outside of her skill set. She probably got so excited with the idea, she kind of just plotted it out and then just kind of vomited this script out. Because I think the reason that this script got into the top 20 on the blacklist is because of that premise alone, is the fact that, oh my god, it's a hot mess celebrity who is secretly a great spy for the CIA. I'm like, that's a great gimmick. You can sell that on a movie poster. You can sell that on a trailer quite easily. What's terrible is the fact that you can only get away with it once, because you can't really franchise this type of gimmick, because how many embarrassing things can you put that same actress through film after film for essentially copying various James Bond style plots and what have you? It's going to run dry if you can't nail the formula down. The other part too is that your first trailer, you can get away with the fact that she's not a spy in that first one, and then you just kind of have these weird, like, you can cut around the reveal of the spy and just have Sandy and Margot like screaming in terror as they're jumping away from some sort of fireball or something, and that will still get people in, be like, oh, it's a comedy, what have you. And then you get the audience in, they're like, oh wait, she's not the ditz, it girl of the moment, the fad Taylor Swift type. She's actually this really awesome spy. And then that's what hooks your audience at that point. I'm like, oh, that's where you get your word of mouth. That's where you get that Barbenheimer type of thing going.
Yeah, and you see and as you're watching the show, that was part of the fun, is she flip-flops in and out of character to maximize using it in whatever situation she needs. And that's what is very interesting, right? Like, oh, now she's going to go and there's one part where it really fell really short where she did that, but most of the time I'm like, yeah, this is cool. How's she going to get out of this? Because it's another tool in her belt to, like, to twist a situation to her benefit. And yeah, so yeah, love it. Love the premise. Love it. It's just I don't know, man.
I don't
a lot of rewriting.
This version of the draft doesn't live up to the potential of that. And we get some, like, from this moment on, the story starts to get a little cringy between Margot and Sandy, because they're now working together. There's not really much reason why, other than the fact that Sandy kind of saves Margot a couple of times through basically leaning into the tabloid aspect of her life. And then we literally get more editorializing in the script, the stuff that I hate the most, which is we get 2 italicized letters to the stunt team to please do your magic and make this fight scene look great. It's like, you as a writer can't even be bothered to come up with any inventive stuff for a fight choreographer to look at and be like, that's cool, I can't wait to actually make that work. You just said, no, I'm washing my hands of it. You guys do all the work because you're going to be able to figure it out. You're the best. I hate that, because listen, stunt guys are great, but they have like a checklist of things that they do well because of safety and of reliability and how they work. But if you can craft a fight scene in a script that allows them to experiment outside of those typical their check boxes of combinations and choreography, they like that more because now they're adding to their repertoire now.
Right.
There's something on Twitter a few weeks ago, a Wolverine and Viking Times fight scene. It was a very paint by numbers, by the book, well done fight scene. But one thing that, because I commented like they did this in an afternoon, the reason I know they did this in the afternoon, there's no flips, there's no flying kicks, there's no lifts, and there's no tosses. And that's when you pick someone up and you throw them or you jump and kick or whatever. It was all just running on the ground and throwing punches and hitting each other. That is easy boilerplate stuff. Every single professional stunt team knows how to do that amazingly well. You want to impress me, you have someone like being thrown into a tree and then bouncing off that tree and jumping back onto the guy from above with like an axe or something, splitting it in half, splitting the guy's head in half. That takes skill, and that takes time, effort, and rigging and practice and coordination. That takes days to do. Boilerplate stuff bores me to hell.
I'm thinking of all the fight scenes in Sisu. Did you watch that movie? Please tell me you've seen Sisu.
I've seen Sisu. Some of the stuff in there is really impressive.
Oh my god, so cool, man!
But
what a
the other
great
part
movie.
too is if you don't have an imagination when you're crafting a fight scene, what you're going to get is a CW level fight scene from their.
Okay, so that
superhero
raises
shows.
up a good question then. So you're writing a script, but you lack the experience or the knowledge on how to write a choreographed fight scene in your script. So what is an okay form instead of like what she did? She straight up just like, it's like we're listening to a voicemail she left for those guys. Hey, come do this for this movie. What's a good way to do that? You don't just write fight scene, or you write cool fight scene ensues for 2 minutes. Like, what do you do? What's the way to handle that?
Ideally, I mean, I've read scripts where basically it's like the hero beats the bad guy in a series of flurrious punches or something of that nature. It's like, okay, that's lazy too. Ideally, what you want to do, if you're having a fight scene, you want some sort of memorable aspect to it. You can't just have a fight for a fight's sake. I look at it to the point where, let's take a look at Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Let's take a look at the fight scenes that we have there. Well, what's in the fight scene? Well, we have Luke tossed into the carbonite freeze thing, and he leaps out and then avoids being frozen. So that's your one point. You just have to say they duel. Vader and Luke duel. Luke is driven back and tossed into the carbonite chamber. Darth Vader activates it. Luke force leaps amazingly to the sky, evading the frozen stuff. He drops down, grabs his lightsaber through force pull, and then they continue their duel. He pushes Darth Vader off the landing, and Darth Vader vanishes. Luke hops in to search for him, and you just kind of hit the
high notes. Hit the high notes.
Hit the high notes, then you lead it all up to, Darth Vader is now throwing objects at Luke through the Force, and Luke is trying to deflect them and is getting hit in the arms and shoulders. Eventually, one breaks through the window, and then the vacuum of the outside hurls Luke onto a landing outside of the carbonite chamber office or what have you. And then you end it with, and then Vader chops off Luke's hand. And you just hit those beat points, and then the connective tissue is something for the choreographer to do, but you just cover it with, they exchange strikes until, boom, this happens, until that happens. You want to highlight those points. If you're yes.
And then question, and sorry, one more question. And then if you put some beats in there that are that general, right? But then when it comes to filming, the choreographer and the director could get together, and then they could like make it much more in depth if they want to, right?
Yeah,
you just got to get enough on there, and then they can go nuts.
They can shorten it. They can add in some extra stuff that they think is cool.
Yeah,
it's basically just kind of get to what is the hitting point of each one.
Because I've often wondered, I don't know if you have access to it, but I would love to see, say, the script for John Wick, any of the John Wicks, and see how all of those insanely choreographed fights, gunfights, are written on the page, right? Because if you just look at John Wick, and you just had fight scene, gunfight scene, fight scene, gunfight scene in between all the dialogue, that script would be like 30 pages long, right? Like, I would love to see those scripts because I want to see how they write that down. Because those movies that are very, very majority of which are fighting, you can't write all that on a page. You just can't.
Not at that level of detail. No, you'd have to have like your shorthand notes and your points where like, okay, so how many guys does John Wick fight? Well, he's going to shoot out with 6 guys here. Great. How does each one get dispatched? And then you just kind of tick off how they each get dispatched. And because that is also directed by a stunt team guy, those are in-house scripts. They don't follow the same rules of something like this. When you're dealing with this one, which is a spec script, your spec script is also going to be as close to the shooting script as possible. The only changes you're going to really get are notes from the studio or whoever's financing it, and then you revise that, and then that ends up becoming the shooting script. You don't really change anything else in it. So
gotcha. Okay.
like you don't write a version of a script for a specific tier or screening process, because that's just a waste of your time. You write the script the best you can in the closest way to the vision you have for it on the page, and then as the process continues, as things get refined and shaped up, whatever ends up being the script that's greenlit, that is your shooting script. And it could be very different from the original one, or it could be very similar from the original one with minor changes. It all depends on the extensive level of the notes provided and how the writer addresses them. When you're dealing with like fight scenes in this case, really if you're doing it as a writer where you have no plan of directing it and you're not self-financing this script, just tell us the pivotal points that are going to make those fight scenes stand out, so that when an audience watches it, they can tell their friends, oh man, did you see this guy got stabbed with this thing? Makes it much easier for things to shape up on
Margot
the page.
Margot throws a right-handed uppercut. Boom!
Yeah.
Pow!
Smash. Margot finds a landline phone and strangles a guy with the telephone cord cable. Like that.
Right.
That's how you got to do it.
And if they want to turn that into a 30-second action sequence where she gets knocked on her ass over a couch and then gets up and then, wipes blood from her lower lip and then goes in or whatever, they could add all that stuff later.
Exactly. That's the flourish that the stunt team can do if they so want to do it, or they can get very, very direct and to the point. Because it's not like, if you're writing a cartoon, you probably have to go into a lot more detail of that, because animators need to do that. And you'd work with a storyboard artist at the same time as you're writing that part. So if you have, say, the funny fight scene between Mr. Smithers and Homer in Mark Montgomery Burns' office, where Smithers grabs the phone, strangles Homer with it, and then starts hitting him in the face with the receiver and says, "It's for you," that has to be, properly framed.
I've probably seen that, but I don't remember it. But that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, it's the one where Mr. Smithers takes a vacation and Homer has to.
It's for you. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, that's funny. You're making me laugh. Okay, we got to get back. I think we should just do a podcast just on how things are done instead of specific script, because we get derailed on all this, and it's all great stuff. But I think both of us subconsciously would rather talk about all these other nuts and bolts than the script itself, because it's like.
Because I'll say this, The gimmick is that the billionaires are doing something that they want to do with space, and their means to do that, and I don't want to spoil it, their means to do that could end up destroying the world.
Or at least half of it.
And it's up to Margot, with the help of Sandy, to stop it. And I'm like, that's a really good premise. And it's 50% there in regards to the ideas used. And I think the reason why it doesn't land is because it's like the Wikipedia level of research into this genre.
Yeah. And the weak dialogue thing, or you said what? Like it's like a fraternity, like lingo, right? Is how it's written.
All the bad guys have fraternity dialogue.
Go to page 44. This is right after they've joined forces, and Sandy is going to help a little bit, and she actually runs interference for the rich billionaire. He's the third of the three that Margot's trying to figure out is in on this evil plot. And so Sandy intervenes with his wife to keep her from going over there, right? And so Sandy, this is the line. Sandy says, "Wow, is that Helmut Lang for Uniqlo?" I don't know. I guess is that a real business, or is that like a fake business? I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't care. But Tony's a female. That's the billionaire's wife. Tony, she has a big shouldn't be here energy, like Viola Davis or Meryl Streep, married young and regrets it every damn day. And I read that and I was like, okay, that's kind of a weird way to describe it, but okay, this is a woman writing this, so I guess that makes sense to her. And then here's Tony, the billionaire's wife. This is what she says. She looks at Sandy and says, "Let me guess. She wants to F my husband, and you've come over here to distract me." Sandy, what? Tony, here you go, guys. Ready? Here's another great line of dialogue for you. Tony, the rich billionaire's wife, probably in her 30s. This is what she says. "Zero shits given. stops him from getting me to touch that disgusting dick. I'm only here until the kids graduate. Anyhow, I'm off to play Resident Evil in my room until they bring out the real food.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, totally. Like, okay, and I here's the thing. My girlfriend, when I was reading this, she was laying in bed next to me, and I said, I'm going to read you this line. I want you to picture a character that would speak this way. Who is this? Who's saying this? And she totally nailed it too. She's like, I don't know, probably a boy, probably like, late teens, early 20s. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, not some 1%er's wife who has kids with him is going to say, I'm only here until the kids graduate. So in my note, I put, who says this to a complete stranger, right? You wouldn't say this to a complete stranger. You might not even say this to your sister, right? But at the end, you finish it with, anyhow, I'm off to play Resident Evil in my room until they bring out the real food. So she's going to go play a video game, a horror video game. I don't know why this specific of a video game. She says she chooses Resident Evil of all things, not Mario or a million other options.
Pokemon or something.
Yes, in my room until they bring out the real food. And I'm like, holy shit, script. What? How could she get so many other dialogues okay? What? Some of them great, some of them okay. But then throwing stuff like this. This is what, the fifth one I've brought up this stream so far?
Well,
what is she thinking?
It screams of desperation to be funny, or reminding herself that this is a comedy and she needs a funny break moment where she's like thinking, oh, what would Leslie Nielsen say at this point if this was a Naked Gun movie? It's like, well, I'm off to play Resident Evil in my room until they bring out the real food. Like,
Yes, if that line was delivered kind of flat and it was in the context of, again, I'll go back to Airplane because it's one of the most like over-the-top, crazy, tongue-in-cheek dad joke comedies of all time. And something like this was said by the main bad guy or, someone integral to the plot. And they're like, well, I'm going to go to my room and play Resident Evil until this all blows over. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Then you'd be like, in the right context, this would be funny. You'd be like, what? That is so random. That is so out of left field. But was this supposed to be funny? Is that what this was? Was this an attempt at funny?
I think so. And it's painful. It's just, the other part too is you also have like the non-committal stuff. So we have some fake companies. Instead of Apple, they use Berry, which it's not as catchy and easy to remember.
Yeah. For product placement, they don't want to say Apple, so they said that instead. There's another line here, another one that felt really out of place with one of these 1%ers. Remember, now we focus on Margot talking to Roger. Now we see the rich billionaire actually speaking, right? We just saw his wife. Now we see Roger, and here's Margot. So what is it you do for a living? And then Roger, when I was 6, my guinea pig passed. Dolly, so out of the blue, I didn't even get to say goodbye. What?
Yeah.
What is this Twilight Zone script? Did this like jump out to you? Like, did I miss something? Did I skip a page? Like, why are we talking? What is happening between these two?
They didn't properly set up how drunk Roger was. I think the other part too is that you have to. It's supposed to be an obstacle to It's supposed to be an obstacle to Margot getting information, but it just doesn't feel authentic or natural. It's like, where's the thing that reminds him of that he gets distracted? Like, what if there was a furry running around that was dressed up like a hamster at a party because they might be there, and he's about to spill something, and he looks at that, and he's like, you know what? I miss my hamster. What? Sorry? Yeah, my and then you just realize, oh, there's an external thing that's causing a distraction. Kind of I don't know, maybe if you're in high school or something, or anyone out there listening, sometimes you're in high school, you're smoking a joint with your friends, and all of a sudden someone starts to skewer the conversation off to something that has nothing to do with anything else, but you're all so high that you just kind of get involved with it. That's kind of what I see echoed here. And it's not funny when it happens in real life, and it's also not funny when it happens in screenplays, unless you find some sort of inciting incident to trigger it that feels authentic to what's going on there. Because he just bringing up the fact that his hamster died, and that it was like the only time he felt like a human being caring about something else that's not what he's doing with his life today, just it doesn't work. I mean,
so hold on. I just thought of this. So it'd be something like they're sitting there. She's trying to ask him what he does for a living, breaking the ice, small talk, right? Mm-hmm. And then he doesn't respond, and we pan to his eyes, and he's like barely listening to her. He's staring off, and he sees whatever, something that makes him something furry, like what you said. Somebody has a pet chinchilla on the boat. I don't know, whatever, something, right?
Or there's some sort of weird magic show where a magician's going to feed a hamster to a snake, and he stops it.
Yes. Okay, yeah, and you hear him, and then Roger says, we hear him mumble, he mumbles the word Dolly. He goes, Dolly. And then Margot's like, what? Parton? Dolly Parton? And he looks at her and goes, no. And then he gets into that, like, oh, no, I had a pet guinea pig when I was 6 named Dolly. But we also, I would say, yes, we have to lay the foundation how drunk he is. We just kind of jump into this conversation and suddenly he's talking about when he was 6 and he had this guinea pig.
Yeah.
It was just really stupid.
We get a very weak setup of her drinking shots, but she's tossing the liquid over her shoulder, so it looks like she's drinking it, but she's not. And everybody else is drinking around her, but we don't get enough of an identification that, oh, how drunk has she gotten Roger to this point? Like, where's the visual tell to convey to us that this guy is wasted and that she's now going to try and probe him to get information?
Or let's not even do the guinea pig thing. It's just too random. Let's go with something that shows he's drunk, some dialogue that shows how wasted he is. And let's establish a little more clearly the guard and stuff that's with him, because that kind of he kind of appears out of nowhere here in just a minute. But whatever, I can forgive those little things. But the next thing that stood out to me was the guard situation, where she's trying to get his driver's license. Is that what it was, if I remember right?
Yeah.
You're the most fascinating man I've ever met. Can I see your driver's license? Is the line from Margot. And then it reads like this. That's it. Guard launches. Margot intercepts his wrist, snaps it, sends him flying over the edge to the ocean 50 feet below.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
and I'm like, this is just a stupid girl boss moment, right? This is all this crap we're getting lately in Hollywood, which is like girls are super strong, super fast, but tougher than anyone. Like, it was just so dumb to me. I'm like, well, at least write it a little better than that. Like, she cleverly distracts him. Like, she leans way over in character being drunk and crazy. And she's like, oh my God, I think I dropped my phone. And then the guard like comes over and is like, what? And he looks over and then because he's off balance, and then she like can knock him over. Something like that.
Well, I'd go like the whole, I think I dropped my earring. And then she bends over as the guy's charging her. Maybe she kicks a chair under his feet and he trips over it. And then she uses her weight and pushes him over to completely over the edge. And she's like, oh, I found it. And oh, what happened to him? You know, ditzy stuff. Like, use the whole concept is that you cannot have even if you were to give this woman like Vasquez arms, like make her super ripped and stuff, you still have certain levels of verisimilitude you can get away with. Ideally what you want to do is you want to Jackie Chan it. Use the environment around you to give them the advantage, because she's weak. She's naturally weaker and frailer than a character that is a big burstling, a security guard. However, if you were to introduce as a joke a security guard that looked like an Oompa Loompa and she throws him over the edge, that works because it's funny. But you don't...
Right after Mr. Billionaire was bragging to her to try and get in her panties how he supports diversity and inclusion in all things.
So that's why all my bodyguards are of DEI stuff. I've got a dwarf, I've got a transgender woman, or a transgender man. I've got one that's non-binary, and they're all pathetic at what they do. That would make funny. That would make.
And then then she compliments him like, "Wow, I'm very impressed." That's and then he thinks, "Oh yeah, I got this chick. Yeah, she's impressed by that." And then she takes advantage of that and just tosses the guy overboard. Yes, that would have been funny. And now we're getting more down the comedy line, which this should have been. So yes.
But that's kind of the gimmick that you can play with when you're dealing with female characters in a physical world, is that you have to use the environment to their advantage and weapons to their advantage, because you can't just give them the super strength needed. Like, you can make them strong enough where they can lift their own body weight so that they can climb quick and move through stuff easily. Fine. That's fine, because that's self-athleticism, that's personal endurance and all that other stuff. You can justify that with training for the field of a CIA agent. But getting into a combat situation with someone twice their size, and you're deliberately writing the character to be twice their size, doesn't really hold much credence if you're going to make it literally a fisticuffs, a show of strength type of thing.
No, and you look at the original La Femme Nikita, and they tackled that very well. Like, if she ever got into a situation, it all came down to brains if she needed to. If she couldn't use her feminine wiles in a way to get what she needed, then she would find some other clever ways to get around it. Or what was the other show? It's, oh my gosh, what the crap, with Jennifer Garner was
Alias.
on forever. Alias, thank you. Like, again, like a lot of that was, sometimes you have to suspend disbelief, but for the most part, like, if it's handled well, there's tons of females that can fight really well, but you can't, the laws of physics, you can't just grab someone by the wrist and just flip them over the edge of a bow. Like, give me a break,
No.
So
you have to get them to lose their
like
balance. Like, that's the thing. It's like, if they're running at you, all you have to do is get them to lose their balance, and then you could use their bodily momentum to your advantage to hurl them away, because it's not really you throwing them anywhere. It's you just guiding their own momentum into a target that you've specified.
Yeah. Or, get him lock him into a kiss, and put his back against the railing and get him to lean way back as he's so distracted by this passionate kiss. And then guess what? Oopsies, he tips him right over, right? You don't even have to do any
pull back
fighting.
quickly, grab him from underneath, and then flip him over.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, I think we beat that to death. But yeah, I just felt like, that thing it just really stood out to me. And then right after that, I had another one that stood out that I thought was weird. Oh, that's further down. Okay, so sorry. What do you want to go to?
Yeah,
next,
we can skip to that part. Let's go there.
So yeah, we go further down. So because where exactly did that happen? I was a little confused. It was the moon pool that she flipped him into, but he ends up in the ocean later or something. I'm a little confused.
Around the moon pool, but he flips him over the edge so that he falls into the ocean.
Into the water. Okay, into the ocean. Gotcha. Okay. And then we go into the conference room where there's the telescope room, right? Now we're kind of in that scene where Sandy's. What was she doing in there? She was hiding, looking for. Oh yeah, she saw somebody up in the window. She saw Dan's sneakers or Alex's sneakers, and so she ran up there to do some stuff. She wanted to be helpful while Margot was out there schmoozing the billionaire, right?
Yeah, and she gets like a picture of a map of the island and a set of islands around Fiji and all that stuff, and she accidentally sends it to TJ when she tried to send it to Jody.
This is the second time we get this clarification that one of the islands is shaped like a chubby boy or a chubby man or something.
Yeah,
with a belly.
Yeah.
Why is that important? We kept hearing about that. I didn't understand why that mattered.
Because of the gimmick later, which is they have to go to the belly of the beast, right? So the whole idea is, the belly is of this silhouetted island.
I did not connect that. I just thought it was because it was like 3 floors down under the main thing. But okay, gotcha. That makes sense now. I did not.
Yeah, it was not well conveyed. I'm like, I read the script twice begrudgingly, and it was like, oh, I see what you're doing there. It's clever, except you're only telling us that this island looks like this now and not at the start where you can actually make some jokes of it, especially if the resort was like, yeah, it looks like a overweight, it looks like Hitchcock's silhouette, big belly and stuff, but we decided to make it classy because Hitchcock was classy, and I'm thinking about calling it the Hitchcock Hotel, but I can't get the rights because the estate doesn't want like you play into the joke of what it is.
Yeah. I like that. Well, yeah. And then so this telescope actually points down into the earth, not up. And they never get into that. It's some technological marvel. They can see through the ground, and it shows them. Well, they don't see through the ground.
They see through the water. So it allows them to see underwater.
Oh, okay. Yeah, through the water. And they see,
depths,
they see this, what is it? Biofuel that takes shape in a sort of, what was it?
It's an underwater trench. So yeah.
But it was like a moss or something that was growing in a cave system underneath the Pacific Ocean, right?
Basically, it's like the deepest. It's the deepest underwater trench in the Pacific or in the world, and it's opened up to an area that's got some sort of biofuel in it that is incredibly powerful, but also extremely volatile. And part of the plot is that they want to harvest this so that they can, basically own the future.
So spoilers. Yeah, and so she hears Alex and Dan. So Alex is our main antagonist. Dan is his tech guy, and they're talking. She overhears them, and this is where we get. I mean, this wasn't too bad for exposition, right? Like she overhears them, and this is, I think, don't overuse this in any stories, but yeah, it's okay to have one of our main protagonists overhear something because she's sleuthing around to begin with. She's there to sleuth around, so it's okay for her to overhear some stuff. So I'm okay with that. But anyway, so we get that exposition and hearing about this trench and all this stuff. And then what? We cut back out to Margot. I'm kind of just going through this.
Yeah, like Margot is kind of doing her own type of search. She's not really getting anywhere. Sandy kind of brings information to her. They team up. They find there's a ticking clock. And before they're able to really get any sort of headway, they both get tranquilized. And they end up on a boat on autopilot that's taking them away, and there is a ticking time bomb aboard, and they are tied up, so they have to kind of get out. Basically, it's their climax. Will they escape? And
okay, wait. Rewind. Can we rewind just a little bit because I had a note here. I wanted to talk to you about it because it really bugged me. So before that, they almost get caught, and then they do get caught. And the way they almost get caught, Margot's kind of cornered in a hallway from 2 different sides. The guards are coming to get her. And then Sandy comes from a 3rd hallway and on the fly thinks of a way to get her out of it. And she runs up with, some tampons? Yeah, a box of tampons. And she's like, oh my gosh. Like, And she used this as cover for that's the reason Margot's running to begin with, is because she has this crazy heavy flow going on. And to quote, it's a bloodbath down there for her, hence the speed walking. Torrential downpour of thickened endometrial cells sloughing off the walls of her. Guard holds up his hand like, stop, I get it. But then this other guard says, I get it. Last month, my wife had a clot the size of, and then Sandy and Margot together say, we get it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, a male guard wouldn't ever say that.
No, they wouldn't volunteer that type of stuff.
No. Guys avoid talking about this at all costs. And I feel like this was either in here for the gross gag of it, which is really lazy humor, or basically this is a woman trying to write a man and she doesn't understand, like, a guy wouldn't say this. He has no interest in going down this path. And it comes back later, the same topic, which again, that's why I highlighted this one. But yes, then they go in there, they start talking, and then they get caught. And then, yeah, they're on, next thing they know, they wake up on this speedboat heading out this part's very important. So when you read this script, which direction was the boat headed?
I thought it was headed to shore towards Fiji, but we find out that it's actually on like a autopilot and it's going to be headed out to the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Yes, which would make sense, right?
Yep.
And then what happens? Okay, so there's a phone call that takes place, right? Mm-hmm. And it's Margot calling her handler, I guess is who it is, right? And this part really bothered me because it made no sense at all. Margot's like, hey, I need some help. And then her handler is like, hey, I just saw the last video of you doing this crazy stuff in character of this person that you're supposed to pretend to be doing. And you're acting exactly like the world expects you to be acting. But this time you went too far. So you're fired. And then he hangs up on her. That's what happens. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so your boss, who's your handler, is somehow surprised you're acting like a crazy hot mess, which is literally the name of this movie, which is a character you're supposed to be playing. But for some reason, whatever, this time you went too far. And not only that, but the whole purpose of your phone call was, hey, we need help. And his reaction is, nah, you went too far, bye-bye, and hangs up on her. Basically, as far as he knows, he just gave her a death sentence because she called for help, right?
Right.
It felt so stupid and so poorly thought out to me. Like, what was your take on that?
Unnecessary, because it's sticking. So this is understanding where someone who understands the rule or knows the rule but doesn't quite understand it, which is, again, don't make anything easy for your hero or your protagonist. So in here, it's like, oh, we need help. Well, I'm firing you instead of helping you. It's like, okay, that doesn't fit the pattern that's needed to, because the justification for her termination is everything that she's done to maintain her disguise.
Thank
and
you.
It doesn't
it's the exact
work.
Opposite.
If anything, it'd be like, what do you mean you need help? You've never needed help before. Well, things have gone sideways. I need an exfil. I need a team here. It's like, well, you're in Fiji. We don't have any people nearby that can get there for at least another 5 hours. It's like, this thing's going to happen at midnight. Well, you're on your own then. That's how you reconcile that. That's how you put it in there, to the point where the idea is that everything that has gone wrong should go wrong in order to make things more difficult for your characters. And when she calls for help and she needs assistance, you find out, well, our resources are in this area here. We can help you, but this is how long it's going to take. And that elapsed time is going to exceed the actual ticking clock that you've set up. And that's the point, is to make things like you're on your own.
That's the squeeze. Squeeze. We've now upped the stakes. We already had a timer, which is a good way to up the stakes in writing. Just so you guys know, good writing is to put a clock on something. Sometimes a literal clock, sometimes not. In this situation, we have a literal clock. Then we up the stakes because she can't get help from someone, but we don't do it in a stupid way where her boss fires her for doing exactly what she's been doing for 7 years, acting like a crazy person in public. It made no sense at all.
Yes, it's like James Bond being fired because he got drunk and slept with the prime minister's wife.
Yeah, because he gambled at a casino one too many times. Like, suddenly his boss is like, no, we saw how much you lost on blackjack last night. You're fired, James Bond. Like, shut up. It didn't make any sense to me. That really bothered me. The other part is there's a line. I don't know if I highlighted it, but there's a line where the boat is described. Come on, please tell me I highlighted this. I can't find it. But the boat describes literally doing a 180 right after that conversation.
Right.
So explain that to me, script. They're heading out to sea. Then the boat does a 180 and is described now as heading out to sea, end quote. And I'm like, I thought they were already heading out to sea. So where were they heading before they did a 180? And I felt like the writer didn't understand that a 180 was an about face. that they thought maybe it did a 90-degree turn to one side and then headed out to sea. Would have made a lot more sense. It
Yeah.
totally made no sense because the boat had to have left from land, right? So doing a 180 would turn them around, make them go back to land. And I thought, okay, that was just an oversight. I'm not going to split hairs. That was just an oversight in the rewrite. They just didn't have the angles right. That's not a big deal. But it still kind of bugged me.
Well, the thing is that we do have a line on 63 where it says the GPS autopilot screen shows they're headed for the mainland. So it's like, that's where we're going. Okay, they're going to the mainland. So now they're going 180. Well, if between them, the island, and the mainland is a straight line, then 180 is going to be basically back to the Fiji island. You want to go 90 degrees because you do a
it made
180.
no sense. And then
it's like
and I
people
just got this
getting
in my
like
notes
saying, "Oh, it's a whole 360." It's like, yeah, that's you turned 360 degrees around. You're still facing the same direction when you started the turn.
Yes, it was so dumb. But again, I could sometimes people get confused on degrees. I get it. So I could let that go. But if you scroll up a little bit, go to 57. At the end of 57, we have another plea to Andy and Brian Lee for another fight scene. Did you catch up? Did you catch that?
Yes, there's two.
There's two of them. Yes, there's another one. And the other thing we skipped was their bonding moment, where they're talking about their applicators, their female parts.
Oh, well, they're in the vents. Well, they're crawling through the vents. Yeah.
Yes, and I was like, yuck. Like, I'm a grown man, I can handle this stuff, but why is this? No one wants to hear about this in a film. This felt so like, again, it's college girl, gross.
It'd be the
stuff,
equivalent of two guys in the vent, like John McClane and Martin Riggs, talking about how they put on a condom, like the preferred way. Like, guys don't do that.
Or their favorite shits they've taken in the last 2 years, right? Oh, I took a picture of it and it was shaped like this. Like, what it does nothing to further the plot, and it doesn't really build their characters. It just felt really stupid to me. Anyway, so yeah, let's keep going.
The other part too is that girls, I mean, and I know this from my sister, girls are actually really gross. So,
yes, I'm aware.
So I'm like, it may not feel authentic with regards to the context of the film, but it might feel authentic with regards to two women would actually talk about this. I just don't think it works in the context of, oh, they're crawling through the vent. What are they going to talk about? Well, let's talk about the escape rope I used here with the tampons and everything. Because
and I just feel like I've seen this a lot. I really I'll just say it this way. It really slapped me in the face in the beginning of season 3 of The Boys, where we have the dude literally shrink down and then jump into a giant penis.
Oh yeah, that oh god.
And I was just like, oh my god, that was the last thing I want to see. I feel like we've crossed a barrier.
Nobody in their right mind would want that.
we've gone too far with some of these things, right? Like, I'm like, there's certain things like, and I'm not even going to say this. Everyone prefaces stuff so much because they don't want to offend people or whatever anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm not going to apologize in advance for no. I feel like there's some stuff that are too private. Are too gross. I don't want to see them on scene. I don't want to be surprised with them. If you want to put them on film and it's in a film that it's expected to be in, like really grotesque, like horror movies, like Saw and stuff, right? I don't like those because it's
stuff.
Yeah, it's just gruesome horror. So I don't want to see it. But when you surprise me with it, then it grosses me out and it really turns me off, and I don't want to see it. That's what happened in the Boys, and of course the Boys just went to crap after the first season or so anyway. But my point is there's some things that just need to stay off screen. In fact, the first episode of the Fallout series on Amazon, I didn't have high hopes for it. A lot of people said they liked it, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a go. After the first episode, I turned it off. Because one of the big things in there that turned me off was after they have sex, the dude walks over there butt naked and wipes his penis off on the curtains. And I'm like, what? Like, these are things I don't need to see. Right?
And I've never heard of that being a thing.
and I'm like, and they did it to show how gross this guy was, like one of the rebels or whatever, the Raiders.
Right.
And so they did it to show it was a little clue hey, this guy's gross, right? Okay, we don't need to do it that way. And that's me. And then some people are fine with it. That's fine. If you're desensitized to that point, that's fine. But for me, I just feel like every show has to keep one up on the other show with all these little things like that. And I'm like, it's just gross. It's just nasty. You don't need to gross me out. You don't need to, and some people take it to the extent that like no movie or show ever needs a sex scene because we don't need to see that. It's too private. I'm not that far. My line is somewhere between that and seeing a giant, enormous penis getting jumped into by this dude's superpower, where it makes him super small. Like, no, I don't want to see that. So anyway, that was my little vent on that. But yeah, that scene with the tampons and stuff, them crawling through the vents, and I think it was supposed to be kind of a funny thing, and let's talk about this thing, and I'm like, yeah, but if it alienates a big chunk of your audience because it kind of grosses them out, it's not funny anymore, right?
And there's
like,
no setup for that level of grossness as they start. Like you haven't braced us for that. You haven't eased us into such a level. It just doesn't feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel authentic. It may be an authentic type of conversation, but it doesn't feel authentic to the moment of this is the place where they talk about that.
Right. And that's important. That's important for just something as simple as a joke or for any part of a plot point. Like you have to set it up. You have to build that foundation first. And yes, I agree. That was a big part of it. But anyway, okay. So yeah, what next? What happens next?
Well, what we get beyond this point is actually into like some heavy spoiler territory, which I don't want to get into because,
okay,
some people actually might dig the premise or want to see how it plays out. I always recommend, even if we don't like the script, I still recommend that you should read it because there's always something to learn from it. In this case here, we've got some high points where some dialogue sings quite well. We've got a great premise. It just the rest of the script doesn't really measure up to what that is. And so I think we should probably just get into the voting process. Is this a pass or a green light? I mean, it should not be much of a surprise to the audience, but I want to keep things consistent on the show format side of things.
Yeah, red light for sure for me. Like, no, this is a
pass.
hard
Yeah,
pass.
no.
This is a pass. This is a premise that if I was conniving and evil and in Hollywood and the script came across my desk, I would go hire someone who had a history of being able to handle something in this genre, and I'd be like, here's the premise, right? You've got this hot mess thing, and I'd say just do what you can with this, because I would love, and I'm saying that because I would love to see it produced and given the TLC and the experience needed to bring this premise to life. It's right up there. The premise of this is right up there with what was that script? Bad Boy with the dog.
Yep.
And the serial killer. Like, it's such an amazing premise. By the way, someone needs to make that movie. That script was barely needed like one more revision. It was so good.
Oh, no,
good movies like
it's fantastic. I hope it does get made because I'd love to do a script to screen review of that here.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this movie, though, is on that level. I see the bones of this and I'm like, this could be that good. It's an original premise. It's very clever. And it could be so much fun. It could have the energy and excitement and motion of like, the new Fall Guy movie. Mm-hmm. But then it could have sort of that backdrop of like a Bond film, And so, yeah, it's there. Potential's there, but for this specific script, I would pass for sure.
No, I have to do a reluctant pass as well. I mean, the premise alone is far better because if this only had a couple of flaws to it, I could probably say, yeah, let's go ahead, give it. We can work those out. But this script has a couple of structuring things, a couple of the character dynamic between all of this. Like at the end of the day, I'm reflecting on the Sandy character, and I realize I don't really have a sense of who she is. I really understand Margot. Margot is great. Margot is fun. Margot's the one I would love to follow. Sandy,
yes,
on the other hand, is disposable. And I think that she's like, even though she's our introductory character to this and the gimmick works with the twist and the reveal for Margot, it just doesn't, there's just nothing else to Sandy that just stands out that makes me remember her in comparison to Margot. So, and I think that's a big problem. Like, you don't have, your main character doesn't rise up to the level of your supporting character in Margot, and you really want your main character to be the one that stands out. And if you're doing like a two-handed stuff, you then also need to have a little bit more conflict, and in that conflict still make Sandy stand out, because every time you're in a scene between Sandy and Margot, I am still more interested in following Margot because she's the one that has more going on. She's a more complex character going on, where Sandy's a very simple character where she's really just facilitating the needs of the plot as opposed to doing stuff on her own agency. And I think that's the issue at hand here, right? Because as
at the mercy of the plot is what you're saying, right? Like, it just kind of happens to her instead of
she investigates the kidnapping, and just because the plot needs her to, we don't get a motivation there. We don't see what's at stake for her if she just passes it on. If she was the type that's like, this is a juicy story, she's getting kidnapped, and then she sends it off, and her says, wait a minute, you have photos of the kidnappers, you know where they're going, and you're just going to fly back? No, I'm canceling your flight. You're going to get over to that island. You're going to contact the police. You're going to follow up the story. We're going to do a 6-issue spread on this. Go over there, or you're fired. And like, oh, great. Now she realizes that there's something there. Then when she gets there, she finds out it's not a kidnapping. She's like, well, it's a bust now. If I tell my boss, I'm going to get fired, so I got to make up something here. Can you help me out? And then Margot's like, no, screw you. And then that's when, as she's wandering her way out, she discovers, wait, there's actually something sinister going on here. It's not the Margot story, but there's something else going on there. And then you tie that all into the spy stuff and it explodes. Maybe we'll get something more memorable from Sandy out of this. But sadly, those types of ideas, it takes a certain mindset and it takes a certain level of research and education regarding those types of stories and what it means to drive a character through those stories in order to really nail this. And I think the only thing that Shanrah got right here is the Margot character, because I understood who she was, what she was trying to do, how she was able to play into her surroundings. She was more fleshed out, and she'd be someone I'd much rather watch and is more interesting. And your secondary characters need to have an interesting level to their own, but they cannot be domineering over your main character, especially in film. Television, you can get away with your main character being the straight guy and being surrounded by a whole bunch of goofy people that we as the audience are inserted into the main character's point of view, and we're seeing all the silliness around him. That can work on television. With movies, you kind of have to go a bit further. You got to make that main character more interesting than the people that they're encountering.
So yeah, because our main character here is Sandy, right?
Yes.
Really.
She is,
even though the title of the film is Hot Mess, Sandy is our central character.
but the irony I think that the writer's trying to convey is that Sandy's the one that's really the hot mess, because her life is crap of her own doing, and Margot's is all a disguise for the life that she loves, which is being a spy. And
so I know we can't I know we can't spoil it, but at least let me ask you this. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how well did you like the ending, the way it all came together?
Ugh. That's the best I can answer. I can't give a number, just an ugh. It wasn't a good ending.
I would say a 3 for me. It was just, but then they did that little epilogue at the very, very end, and I was
which
like,
also
the throwback.
a flashback, which I didn't like.
It was a flashback to our opening, which in a way, I see what she was doing. She's trying to bring it all full circle with I'll at least say this much, Obama thing, and
Yeah.
I was like, it was dumb, dude. It fell really flat to me. I'm like, just delete that. Just don't even do that. Just don't.
No, because
so yeah.
when you have this type of ending and we have that type of post-credit scene or mid-credit scene that she wrote in there, basically she's saying this should be a franchise. And I'm like, well, the premise lends it to be a franchise, but the hook you can only get away with once, which means that if you have an idea for a second one, it needs to be really, really good. And I don't see the premise having the legs for
That's so funny.
film.
Like, you're right. That's there for a sequel, and it didn't even register me. I was so distracted by how bad it was. I'm like, no, just no.
Yeah.
But you as a writer, you're like, oh yeah, they're just totally setting it up so they can keep that door open, right? In case it does really well. But even without that, you could still write a sequel, right? You don't need that scene. So anyway, yeah, okay, well, good. I think, does it make it boring when we both have the same take? I mean, a lot of the shows I listen to, like, it seems like most everybody's usually on the same page, for the majority of these scripts.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's not much of a difference overall, but I mean, there's different. I mean, everybody kind of feels on the same page because, like, I guess the audience at large, and also a lot of the people that I've talked with, even though I am looking for very different types of opinions or different approaches to stuff, there are certain fundamentals with how we watch and read stories that are universal, and that's one of the things I like doing about this show is that even though there's definitely different perspectives and different experiences, we're kind of landing in the same boat when it comes to, oh yeah, this is where the story kind of works, this is where it doesn't, this is where it kind of falls apart. These are the types of feedback notes and conversations that a lot of people in the industry don't get exposed to from the audience perspective. Like, it's not until far after the fact. And I think it comes down to the fact that a lot of people are writing within the Hollywood bubble. They're just kind of cropping out these scripts as best they can, or at least as best they think they can get them out, and doing so without much vetting on the team around them that's supposed to be looking out for them, like their agent and their manager. And a good agent and manager would look at this and they'd say all the things that we've covered today. They'd be like, your main character is not very memorable. You're literally writing a letter to stunt choreographers to do your job for you. Screw that. That's arrogant, obnoxious.
That was so bad. Yeah. Twice. That happened twice.
Like no person that actually cares about you as a writer would not bring that up to you for your script. I mean, they would basically say, listen, you've got a fantastic premise. There's a lot of potential here. We need to tighten this thing up. We need to get Sandy stronger. We need to up the stakes a little bit more personally for these characters. And we need to just really dig into what makes this genre successful and find ways that we can apply those things people liked to a female-led thriller of this type. And also figure out, is this a comedy or not? And then if it's not a comedy, toss it out. And if it is a comedy, amp it up.
That's what I was trying to say. Is it a comedy? Tighten it up. It's too long. And the other thing I just thought of is like, you know what? I'm actually surprised that this wasn't, that the Sandy character wasn't played by a male. Because it would be very on point for all the crap we've been getting for these beta males with these girl bosses. That was the dynamic, right? That Sandy's actually a guy working for this crappy magazine, whatever, paper, and that all these situations, you'd have to slightly change a few things, but that this beta male was, trying to help her out, and and she had to save the day for everything.
I mean, ironically enough, the screenplay Ghosted, which had Chris Evans as the beta male, that was written originally where the Chris Evans character was the female and the spy was the male. And it was the male spy that ghosted her, and she's the one looking for him. And it was a really good script. And as soon as they flipped those roles, which was the marketing gimmick to try and sell this, the story fell apart. Why? Well, because we didn't believe that the stuff that what's her name was doing. I can't remember her name. She's Anna de Armas, who Hollywood's forcing to try and make a star, and I just don't think it's working right now. We just didn't believe what she was doing. Why? Because that's all they did from the script. They just switched the gender roles. They didn't actually write her as a female spy to lean into what a female spy would have to accomplish given her skill set and her limitations. That's why it didn't work. And here we've got something that crosses the edge a couple of times, but then goes back into, again, we have some of the wit stuff, like the tampon thing. That's a witty thing. That works.
Right.
There's like nothing much else there. They're not doing, there's nothing clever or inventive for me to say, hey, this script has got some difficult points to it. It's got a great premise, and it's got this one cool gimmick in the second act that actually makes this really stand out, like that memorable thing, like Joker killing the guy with the pencil eraser. Where's that moment that you have in this that makes it stand out, that makes people say,
that was so good. Everyone remembers that because it's so good. It's burned into your brain. It's so unexpected and so fantastic. Yeah, I agree. And I think I would just say with this script, I'd say, where's the fun? Where's the fun? We get little, it's like the fun is flirting with us, right? We get a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah.
And then it's just so derailed by everything else. I think this script need to be 30 pages shorter. And I think that we need to pick a lane. Is it fun, or is it comedy, or is it just an action? But yeah, anyway, we're beating a dead horse. This poor horse.
No, I mean, I'll put it to you this way: if the writer does manage to hear us discuss this script, I'm not judging you personally. I just think the work is just not to the level of standard that you have in other areas of the script. I think the high points that are out there, such as the Margot character, the gimmick is great. You just have to do the hardest thing, which is figure out a way to get the rest of the script to measure up to those high points you've established, and it's no easy task. Yes. So before we wrap up, we do actually have a comment on the Patreon side of things. Remember, guys, if you want to have us read your comments on this show, you can either leave them out on the Patreon there, in which case we'll read on the following episode show, or you can send in those super chats, which go to support the show. We have one here from RS, who's a new member, who says, I learned so much just reading the scripts once and listening to your podcast. I agree with a lot of your insights. I want to thank you, RS, for that comment. It's really encouraging to keep us keep going with this thing. We are at the 50% mark, the halfway point of the year of the show. This is episode 26. With your thanks, TJ, we actually have a theme song that I'll be working on to try and get into.
Oh yeah, are you gonna use it at least for a little while? I think that'd be cool, man.
I'm gonna try it out as soon as I can get some nice companion images with it, because I really dig it. You went way beyond anything that was needed of you, and I appreciate that. And I can't wait to actually share that with the audience in the near future. So yeah, with that said, I mean, we've gone on. It's had a great conversation. It's like.
There were a couple questions in chat on YouTube if you want to.
Let's go for some of that too. Sure, why not?
So I saw one about if you would write in the actual shots in certain specific parts of the script for the director, for the cinematographer.
Nope.
Is that ever a thing in scripts?
Only if you're directing.
Okay. So you don't put any of that in there?
No, because if you're writing in the shots, it's like, well, why is this writer telling me how to direct a movie? I'm directing the movie. Screw this. Yeah, don't do that. Very off-putting.
That would make them
mad. If
you're
the director, you're going to be the director, you plan on being the director, go to town on the shots you're going to do. It's fine. It's your script. You're directing it. If you know that that's your case, go for it. It's good for you. But if you're just the screenwriter, don't step on the toes of the director.
So stay in your lane again, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's see. Read by Nature said, "Are they mistaking Harley Quinn for Jack Sparrow with all this drunken swaying?" Yeah,
maybe.
That's kind of the image you get, right? Is Jack Sparrow doing his, Johnny Depp doing his little thing with his hands. Okay, so there's the camera shots one. I thought I saw one more come through a little earlier than that. Let me scroll up here.
Like on my stream element stuff, I can't get access to some of these, so I'm trying to balance it out. So sorry guys. I mean, the super chat stuff comes up, but everything else, this gotta go through the long way.
I just saw a few. I was glancing at chat a little bit while we were doing this show. I love Big Trouble in Little China. Kind of humor in that movie was a flop. Oh man, I love Big Trouble in Little China. It was one of my favorite shows as a kid. And I recently got it on Blu-ray, and
that movie has a great production history because it was originally going to be a Western set in the 1800s, and they completely revamped it.
Shut your mouth. Are you serious?
Yep.
That had some of the best. What captured me as a kid was, the three different ninja karate guys. They had their different outfits, and my favorite was always the lightning guy. And with the bit, anyway, they had my friend near my grandma's house. I'll be brief. His older brothers had it. I was like, first time I saw it, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. And I just remember seeing it for the first time. And I was late getting back to my grandma's house. She was not happy with me. And I still remember that because that movie just like entranced me. And then we later got it on VHS. And then I probably wore that tape out. I just watched it so much. So yeah. And I got my first crush on, was it Kim Cattrall?
Kim Cattrall. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mannequin. I had a huge crush on her as a kid. So anyway, I glanced through. I didn't see really any other questions that stood out. Hey,
that's not a problem. I guess we hit all the important parts there. As always, guys, if you're listening and you want to read the script but you don't know where to find it, you can just do a Google search on it. It's usually out there. If you're having difficulties, I am more than happy to get the script into your hands. The only stipulation I have is that please don't try and share it virally or anything of that nature. This is something that is still being circulated around the industry right now. As always, I'm always hoping for the writer, even though if I don't like their script, that they do get some progress out of it. Because again, one thing you have to give notes to is that this feels like an original idea in an industry where we don't get many original ideas. So that needs to be encouraged despite whether or not the quality measures up to the premise. I want to make sure that is laid out there. Any final thoughts, TJ, before we call it a night on this epic episode?
No, I think I had a great time. Thanks for having me on. I always love to join you and talk script stuff. And I love picking your brain. Sorry we get a little derailed sometimes, but I hope that the listeners enjoy you kind of peeling back a little bit the mystery behind Hollywood and how things run, because it's awesome. It's fascinating.
Yeah, mine is just one avenue of many. So I want to thank TJ for coming on this weekend. We're going to have you back, of course, in the near future for some more episodes. Guys, I've got an interview with Michael Davis, who's the director of Shoot 'Em Up, who's also did 100 Girls, 100 Women, and 8 Days a Week, as well as Beanstalk and a few other fun movies. He's making a computer-animated film called Blast 'Em Up right now. So that interview is already on my Patreon. You can go watch it right now if you're a Patreon member. If not, it will be available on YouTube as soon as YouTube uploads the HD version. It's been stuck on SD for the last like 4 days, but that might drop tomorrow morning. Either way, be on the lookout for that. It's a wonderful interview, lots of great stuff. I'm going to be trying to get more directors, writers, other talent in onto interviews to show you a little bit more insights into how the machine works directly from the source. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I want you all to have a wonderful weekend. To my fellow Canadians out there, happy Canada Day, July 1st. To my American friends, happy Independence Day for next week. Again, haven't determined if it'll be live or recorded show, but I'll let you guys all know when I know. Hopefully it'll be in the next day or two. Until then, guys, thank you so much. And never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.